Chapter 4287. Xiaohua's arm trembled a few times, and the Buddha Radiant's golden body fell a few dozen feet. Xiaohua's body also fell a few dozen feet, and Buddha Bodhi also fell a few dozen feet. Xiaohua asked again, "In the future, don't blame me for not giving you a chance." Chunzong was a little bewildered, but he still nodded and said, "Don't worry, senior. I know what I'm doing, and I won't blame you. Moreover, I'll be grateful for everything you've done today." Sigh. Xiaohua seemed to have aged a lot. He sighed, and his figure shook. He easily escaped from the Buddha Radiant's golden body and landed in front of Chunzong. He helped him up, and asked in confusion, Why are you so decisive?" Chunzong held Xiaohua's arm. The care and warmth from Xiaohua's arm made him feel incomparably safe. He wiped away the tears on his face and said with a smile, "I have my own plans. There's no need to ask, enlightened master. Moreover, since the opportunity has already been obtained by that senior, this is also Buddha's arrangement. I don't want to fight for anything." "All right." Xiaohua nodded helplessly. He looked at the Buddha radiance rising like a scorching sun in the distance and smiled bitterly. "Even if you want to go back on your words now, I'm afraid you can't." Without Xiaohua's obstruction, the Buddha radiant's golden body rushed towards Buddha Bodhi's head like a falling star. Even if Buddha Bodhi wanted to dodge now, he wouldn't have the chance to do so. Namo Maitreya Buddha, Namo Maitreya Buddha. Countless Buddhist chants seemed to come from different realms. Endless heavenly flowers completely covered the entire snowy mountain. Groups of fairies swayed their waists, bounced off the pipa, and clustered around. The heavenly dragon that wanted to kill Xiaohua earlier also became docile at this time, dancing in the void and congratulating him. The previous phenomena appeared 10 times, 100 times more. Moreover, on the left and right of the Buddha Bodhi, countless Buddha kingdoms transformed into scattered lights and surged out. The Mahavirakana World Lord and the Dipankara Archaic Buddha World Lord's Buddha phantoms also appeared amidst the scattered lights. The merciful and joyful expressions on their faces filled the entire blessed land world's emotions, and they started surging out from the sky. Disciple respectfully welcomes Namo Dang Lai Maitreya to the Pure Land world. At this moment, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's heart was finally at ease. He knelt in front of the Buddha Bodhi and pressed his palms together. At this moment, the Buddha Bodhi's entire body shone with golden radiance. Just like the Buddha radiance from before, the radiance behind his head displayed boundless divine abilities. Countless rivers of faith vaguely seeped out from the radiance, and countless Buddha kingdom phenomena also appeared amidst the radiance. The myriad Buddha diagram on the Buddha Bodhi's body transformed into billions of Buddha statues, which surrounded him. Each of them had their palms pressed together, and they were as pious as the Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. Namo Maitreya Buddha, Amitabhadra, Amitabhadra. The Buddha Bodhi chanted, and his appearance that was identical to Chunzong's started to turn turbid and blurry. The swastika symbol between his brows gradually became clearer and condensed. Woo-woo. At this moment, a strange roar came from the shadows between the Buddha radiance. Strange demonic energy gushed out from the shadows like ghosts, and wherever it passed, the Buddha radiance and the Buddha shadow would turn pitch black. Even the goddesses had turned into Rakshasas, and the celestial dragons had turned into demonic dragons. However, to everyone's surprise, as soon as the demon statues appeared, another demon clan's aura, which was not very powerful but even more bizarre, appeared. Wherever this demon clan's aura passed, all the demon chi retreated in defeat. Aoo aoo. A series of ghostly wails and howls came from the void, as if someone had stepped on a dog's tail. As soon as this sound came out, all the demon statues disappeared completely. At the same time, the bizarre demon clan's aura also flashed and disappeared without a trace. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva beamed with joy, and his heart was completely at ease. As the saying goes, Buddha is 1 foot tall, the devil is 10 feet tall. The golem's test for Buddhas was the most difficult, especially for a supreme Buddha like Maitreya. At the very least, the Tusita Buddha celestial demon would appear. When Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was trying to attain Buddhahood, he had been attacked by the celestial demon and almost destroyed his Buddhahood. Now that he thought about it, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva had a deep impression of it, so when Buddha Bodhi attained Buddhahood, his heart clenched. However, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was still a little surprised. The demonic tribulation had disappeared too easily, and the sudden appearance of the demonic aura was even stranger. It was as if the celestial demon had been scared away by the appearance of the demonic aura. Dang! When the Buddha bell rang for the last time, the phenomena of attaining Buddhahood above the great snow mountain gradually disappeared. A rainbow bridge descended from the void and landed at Buddha Bodhi's feet. At this time, the swastika symbol between Buddha Bodhi's eyebrows had already formed, and the appearance of the Buddha radiance had also been revealed. To Xiao Hua's surprise, Buddha Bodhi's appearance was different from his and Jiang Luer's. It was actually the appearance of Namo Maitreya Buddha on the myriad Buddha diagram. Sandalwood. Buddha Bodhi's voice resounded in Xiao Hua's heart. When a Buddha Lord attains Buddhahood, it's the same as when a Taoist cultivator attains nascent soul. They can choose their original form or Buddha form. If they choose Buddha form, then their original form will be hidden. Even the Mahavirakana World Lord and the Dipankara archaic Buddha wouldn't be able to discover their original form. Good. Xiao Hua also laughed in his heart. In this way, even the two Buddha Lords wouldn't be able to know that Master is Ai's clone? That should be the case. However, this monk doesn't know if there will be an exception. Buddha Bodhi answered calmly. Don't worry about it. Xiao Hua instructed, if you can hide it, then hide it. If you can't hide it, then be honest. I won't do anything to harm your Buddhism. You don't have to worry. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Bodhi, who was already the Maitreya Buddha of the World Lord, chanted Buddha's name in his heart. I am your Buddha incarnation, and also one of your thousands of thoughts. Your thoughts are my thoughts. If you didn't have good intentions, how could you have refined my Maitreya Buddha of the World Lord's Buddha fruit? Xiao Hua smiled and didn't say anything. Buddha Lord. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya said respectfully, in the Thunder Sound Temple, not only are the two World Lords waiting for Buddha Lord, there are also other Buddha Lords, Bodhisattvas, Arhats, Heavenly Kings, and others waiting to congratulate Buddha Lord. In this disciple's opinion, we should return to the Thunder Sound Temple as soon as possible. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Namo Maitreya chanted Buddha's name and stepped onto the rainbow bridge condensed from Buddha's light. He put his palms together and said, Taoist Xiao, we will meet again if fate allows. Congratulations to Great Master for achieving Buddha fruit. Xiao Hua bowed and said, I respectfully send Great Master off. This disciple respectfully sends Namo Maitreya Buddha of the World Lord. Chuanzang didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly bowed. Zhen Kong, Zhen Han, Zhen Feng, and the others also hurriedly bowed and sent them off. Instead, it was Devouring Heaven who raised his hand and called out, that Buddha Lord, Bodhisattva, is it okay for me to become your disciple? Unfortunately, before he could finish speaking, Namo Maitreya Buddha of the World Lord raised his hand and a ball of golden light flew out from his hand and landed in between Chuanzang's eyebrows. When that golden light came into contact with Chuanzang's skin, it immediately disappeared without a trace. Chuanzang was startled, but his eyes revealed a knowing smile. He said, Namo Maitreya Buddha, many thanks for the Buddha Lord's blessing. If it's Buddhism, give it to Namo Maitreya Buddha of the World Lord. If it's Chuanzang, return it to Chuanzang. Namo Maitreya Buddha of the World Lord smiled slightly and said some inexplicable words. His body emitted Buddhist light and soared into the sky. Namo Maitreya Buddha Samantabhadra also stepped on a Buddhist lotus and followed beside him. In just a few breaths of time, the two disappeared. Damn it! Before Chuanzang and the others could get up, Devouring Heaven shouted, What the hell is going on? Is he still letting people become his disciple? Xiao Hua looked at Chuanzang with a smile and then looked at Devouring Heaven. He turned his head and scolded Yuan Tong Tian, you don't have good eyesight. Hurry up and help your master down. Yes, master, please. Yuan Tongtian heard and hurriedly helped Chuanzang down from the sky. Devouring Heaven flew over and grabbed Xiaohua and asked, Enlightened Master, what do you think is going on? Am I still going to become his disciple? Did Bodhisattva stop you? Xiaohua asked with interest. No. Maitreya Buddha didn't let you become his disciple? Xiaohua asked again. Devouring Heaven squinted his small eyes and shook his head again, no. Xiaohua stretched out his hand and shrugged. He smiled and said, Isn't that the case? They didn't stop you. Why can't you become his disciple? Master, please accept a bow from your disciple. Devouring Heaven kowtowed in front of the exquisite temple, making a small hole in the ground. Chuanzang's eyes showed a strange color. He looked at Devouring Heaven as if he was thinking about something. He then raised his head and asked Xiaohua, Enlightened Master, why is this? Why does this child insist on becoming my disciple? If he wants to cultivate, he can become Senior's disciple. Of course there's a secret behind it. Xiaohua smiled and explained the matter of the Devouring the Heavens General Merits Atonement. In the end, he said, he entered Buddhism when he was young and served your previous life wholeheartedly. Now that he has the chance to help you seek the Sutra of Extreme Bliss, you should fulfill his wish. Actually. Chuanzang opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he hesitated. He paused and said, Sutra seeking in extreme bliss is far from as simple as Enlightened Master thinks. It doesn't matter if it is simple or not. As long as you safely reach Longevity Town, this old man doesn't care about other complicated matters. Xiaohua waved his hand and stopped Chuanzang's explanation. Chapter 4288. Chuanzang thought for a moment and said to Tunshan, Namo Amitba, since you are willing to become my disciple and preach Buddhism, then I am willing to accept you as my disciple. Thank you, Master. Tunshan was overjoyed and kowtowed. Chuanzang supported Tunshan and said solemnly, Don't worry, I still have a few words to say. If you can understand them, then you can agree. Okay. Tunshan agreed without hesitation. My name is Chun, and my disciples are all Zhen. Your Dharma name will be Zhenjia. Yes, Master. Master's path is far from being as smooth as you think. The sutra seeking in bliss is just the beginning. Master still has a long way to go. I'm afraid that even if I exhaust all my strength in this lifetime, I won't be able to reach the end. If you become my disciple, you'll have to suffer a lot. You have to understand. Disciple has committed too many sins. If I don't follow Master, how can I atone for those sins? The harder Master's path is, the happier disciple will be. What are you saying? Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Good, if that's the case, then from today onwards, you are my disciple. Chuanzang smiled and touched Zhenjia's head. Namo Amitba. Zhenjia chanted Buddha's name sincerely, and a layer of Buddha's aura appeared around him. This. Xiaohua was a little surprised. Lu Er's cultivation is now completely gone. He's just an ordinary monk. The merit of praying for the scriptures in nirvana hasn't been realized yet. Could it be that Lu Er has other opportunities? Could there be something else with the golden aura that Namo Amitba gave him? Xiaohua was puzzled, but Chuanzang smiled and said to Zhenjia, Zhenjia, get up. Let me introduce you to my disciples. Dragon Horse Zhenfeng and Zhenhan were already waiting at the side. When they saw Chuanzang talking, they hurried over. Chuanzang pointed at Dragon Horse Zhenfeng and said, This is Zhenfeng. Greetings, Master. Dragon Horse Zhenfeng didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly raised his head to pay his respects. However, he suddenly froze because Chuanzang didn't say who was the senior and who was the junior. Dragon Horse Zhenfeng hurriedly looked at Chuanzang. However, Chuanzang did not even look at him. He pointed at Zhenhan and said, This is Zhenhan. Greetings, senior brother. Zhenhan was so cunning that she didn't even wait for Chuanzang to finish before hurriedly bowing. Zhenjia nodded at Zhenhan, returning the greeting. This is Jin Kong, their eldest senior brother. Jin Kong hurriedly walked over. Chun Zong pointed at Jin Kong and introduced him with a smile. That's right, Jin Kong. Jin Jie smiled and patted Jin Kong's shoulder. You have some skills. It's your fortune to be able to become master's disciple, hee. Jin Kong chuckled and didn't want to say anything more. Jin Kong. Chuanzong instructed, the matter here is over. Pack your things, and I will follow you down the mountain. Master. Jin Jie hurriedly asked, shouldn't we rest here for a few more days? No. Chuanzong shook his head, the hidden immortal continent urgently needs the Mahayana Buddhist scriptures. The earlier we send them over, the earlier those bodhisattvas will be able to obtain our Buddha's light. Disciple understands. Seeing Jin Kong turn around to pack his things, Jin Jie had no choice but to follow him out of the temple. Chuanzong looked at Xiao Hua and opened his mouth, wanting to say something. However, when the words reached his mouth, he didn't know how to speak. Chuanzong always had doubts about how he came to the Pure Land world and how he came to the small golden temple. However, when he saw Xiao Hua, all of his doubts were answered. There was no need for him to ask anything. As for Xiao Hua, he wanted to ask Chuanzong why he didn't want the Nanwu Maitreya Buddha fruit. However, when he thought of Chuanzong's determination, the golden light that the world-exalted Maitreya gave him before he left, and the phenomenon just now, he knew that Chuanzong must have some difficulties. Therefore, he decided not to ask. For a moment, the entire small exquisite temple became as lonely as snow. Outside the small exquisite temple, it was bustling with noise and excitement. When Jin Jie came out of the small exquisite temple, he pointed at Jin Kong and said, Brat, listen. You are their senior brother, not mine. In the future, you have to call me eldest senior brother. Otherwise, I will beat you to death with my rake. Jin Kong shrugged with an indifferent expression on his face. He casually said, no problem, eldest senior brother. His goal was to protect Chuanzong and complete Xiao Hua's orders. He didn't care about being called eldest senior brother or second senior brother. And you. Jin Jie pointed at Jin Feng and Jin Han and said fiercely, the two of you have to call me eldest senior brother as well. Otherwise, you will be beaten to death by my rake. Yes, eldest senior brother. How could Jin Feng and Jin Han dare to talk back to Jin Jie? After all, Jin Jie's strength was comparable to Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. And, not bad. Jin Jie said proudly. He raised his hand and took the Buddhist scripture from Jin Feng's back and threw it to Jin Han. In the future, you don't need to protect Master. You can carry this thing. Ah. Jin Han was stunned. She caught the scripture and didn't know what to do. Jin Jie glared and said coldly, what? You don't want to? That's right. Jin Feng was overjoyed. These scriptures can't be placed in a spatial pouch. You have to carry them on your shoulders. Later, I will find a pole for you in the exquisite temple. I don't need your help. I have. Jin Han snorted and took out a weapon that looked like a crescent moon spade from her spatial pouch. She carried the scripture on her shoulders. Jin Feng shouted happily, thank you, eldest senior brother. Thank you, eldest senior brother. No need to thank me. Jin Jie smiled and waved his hand. In the future, you just have to carry me. Ah. What? Eldest senior brother. Jin Feng was stunned. Unfortunately, before he could say anything, Jin Jie landed on Jin Feng's back and pressed down on him, causing Jin Feng's hooves to tremble. Motherfucker, get bigger. Jin Jie felt that its lower body was uncomfortable, so it raised its hoof and slapped Jin Feng's butt. Yes. Jin Feng wanted to cry but couldn't. He really wanted to roar at Jin Jie, damn it, I am the 10th prince of the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace. However, he was afraid that if he said that, he would be killed by Jin Jie before the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace got the news. Huff huff. Dragon Horse Jin Feng's back became bigger, and Jinjie felt extremely comfortable. In just a short moment, it actually started snoring. Hearing this snoring sound, Dragon Horse Jinfeng was so scared that it didn't even dare to move, lest it startled this fiend. Damn it, you deserve it. Zhenhan picked up the scripture and felt relaxed. Looking at Jinjie's huge figure pressing down on the dragon horse's back, he couldn't help but laugh in his heart. Zhenkong only looked coldly at Jinjie for a few times before he focused his attention on that thin figure in the Linglong temple. His previous hatred towards Xiaohua had now turned into longing and respect. Senior. In the exquisite temple, Chuanzang finally spoke. Junior's origin is unknown. When Master saw Junior was staying in Shun River. Therefore, before Junior was accepted as Master's disciple, Junior was called Jiang Luer. In the future, Senior can call Junior Chuanzang or Junior Jiang Luer. Xiaohua smiled and raised his hand slightly. However, he stopped after raising his hand a little and said, "All right, Luer, I understand. You and I have met by fate. If you have any problems, don't hesitate to find me." "Yes, disciple understands." Chunzang bowed. It wasn't the etiquette of the Buddhist sect. He said, "Disciple has a heavy responsibility on his shoulders. I don't dare to stay here any longer. I'll go down the mountain and rush to Longevity Town." "All right." Xiaohua opened his mouth again. It seemed like he wanted to tell Jiang Luer about the technique of the crown on Yuan Tongtian's head. It also seemed like he wanted to tell Jiang Luer about Xiao Xinrui's longing for him. It also seemed like he wanted to tell Jiang Luer that the sutra seeking nirvana was nothing but a farce. Chuanzang stood up with tears in his eyes. Silence was better than words. "Go." Finally, Xiaohua opened his mouth. "Now that this old man has returned, you can do whatever you want, yes?" Chunzang didn't say anything else. He turned around and walked out of the Linglong temple. Facing the dragon horse Jinfeng's resentful gaze, Chunzang acted as if he didn't hear it. Holding his staff, he walked down the mountain path. Although it was the same path up and down the mountain, Chunzang believed that the scenery down the mountain would be different. "Junior thanks spiritual master for saving my life." Zhenkong walked at the back. He looked back at Xiaohua, who was slowly walking out of the Linglong temple, and knelt on the ground again. Go." Xiaohua waved his hand and helped Zhenkong up. He took out some pills from his bosom and handed them to Zhenkong. "These are some pills. Take them. Also, I'll keep the magic wand for you. When you come back from the Longevity Town, you can come and find me." "Many thanks, Senior." Zhenkong finally smiled. He jumped and chased after Chunzang. This fire ape has changed a lot. It's much more pleasing to the eye than before. Thunderbolt's spiritual master said. Xiaohua also sighed, that's right. Not only can humans change, demons can also change. Previously, I only wanted to punish this guy. In order to let him protect Luer, I taught him a technique. Who would have thought that he was actually a filial demon who couldn't forget everything that happened in the illusion? It's really beyond I's expectations. There are many unexpected things. Thunderbolt's spiritual master said with a smile, not only Yuan Tongtian, there's also Jiang Luer. He actually abandoned the Buddha fruit that he cultivated for 9 lifetimes. What is he planning in his heart? I'm not sure. Perhaps Maitreya Buddha would know about this matter. Xiaohua shook his head. There must be some secret within that ball of golden light. When I left, I asked him. Thunderbolt's spiritual master said, the revered one also doesn't know what's within the golden light. It's just that when Luer rejected the Buddha fruit, this golden light strangely emerged from the remains of the ancient Sili. Furthermore, the revered one's Buddha consciousness and other divine abilities were also unable to probe it. When Luer said, if it's Chunzang, then return it to Chunzang, this golden light was eager to give it a try. The revered one knew that this golden light was left behind by Namo Maitreya Buddha in his previous life. Chapter 4289. I hope Lu Er's choice is correct. At this moment, what else could Xiaohua say? He could only bless Chunzong. Also, Lightning Immortal raised his hand and the Son of Heaven and Earth Pagoda appeared in his hand. Xiaohua asked curiously, fellow Daoist Wenxiu has no use for this thing. Didn't you give it to Fujiwen? Lightning Immortal rolled his eyes and said, I naturally gave it to Fujiwen. However, when Fujiwen was refining it, he found something inside. Oh. What is it? Xiaohua asked curiously, is this what you meant by unexpected? Of course. Lightning Immortal's hand shook and a golden light flew out from the Son of Heaven and Earth Pagoda. Xiaohua reached out and grabbed it. It was in the shape of a key. This is. Xiaohua's figure shook. He hastily waved his hand and took out the other key he obtained from the Forgotten Realm of the Dragon Island. Sure enough, these two keys were very similar. Apart from the dragon patterns, they were practically identical. Damn, this thing is indeed somewhat interesting. Xiaohua took the two keys and narrowed his eyes. He looked at Lightning Immortal and said, one of them fell into the space crack from the dragon field. The other one is in the hands of Venerable Dragon God. This is probably the key to a secret place in the dragon field or even the dragon world, right? Who knows? Lightning Immortal shrugged, I have no use for it. Only fellow Daoist is useful. Forget it, let's talk about this in the future. Xiaohua clapped his hands and said with a smile, in the end, this world's banquet will come to an end. Maitreya Buddha has attained enlightenment in the exquisite temple of the Great Snow Mountain. Today's banquet has already ended. It's time for us to leave. As for the future, I'm afraid there will be many Buddhas coming to pay their respects. This place will not be peaceful. Indeed. This place is no longer suitable for building a teleportation formation. The Thunderbolt Immortal knew what Xiaohua was talking about. He nodded in agreement and looked up at the sky. At this moment, all the phenomena in the sky had disappeared. However, as soon as the Buddhist kingdom phenomenon disappeared, a strange green-red dark cloud that was tens of thousands of miles in size appeared in the sky. These dark clouds seemed to be in the void, but also seemed to be in the clouds. They could not be seen clearly. However, an aura more solid than a mountain rock came out from the dark clouds. It transcended space and landed on Lightning Immortal's heart. After the Thunderbolt Immortal finished speaking, he probed, fellow Daoist, can you still hold on? The Thunderclap Immortal's words were rarely abrupt, so it was impossible for others to know. However, Xiaohua raised his head as if nothing had happened. He nodded and said, if it was before, perhaps I would be somewhat flustered. But now? I can still suppress it. All right. The Thunderbolt Immortal nodded, but he still warned, even so, fellow Daoist, you must not be too careless. All right, I understand. Xiaohua nodded. Standing in the air above the snowy mountain, he glanced at the master and disciples who were squirming on the mountain path like ants. He said in a low voice, after sending them away, we still have to send one more person away. Who? The Thunderbolt Immortal was taken aback. However, he immediately understood and nodded. Ah, that's right. In the end, it was time for him to leave. Send him away, I'll hide for a while. As he spoke, Xiaohua took out the Kunlun mirror. Using his magic power, he invited Sun Jian out from Shenhua continent, while the Thunderbolt Immortal returned to Shenhua continent. The moment Sun Jian landed in the air, he immediately became alert. He raised his head to look at the sky in astonishment, then bowed and said, greetings, spiritual master Xiao. No need to be so polite. Xiaohua hurriedly raised his hand to help Sun Jian up. He said with a hint of loneliness, in the future, when you see I, just call me fellow Daoist. Oh. Sun Jian was taken aback. He instantly understood the meaning of Xiaohua's words. He hurriedly released his divine sense to explore the surroundings. However, after a moment, he was somewhat bewildered. He looked at Xiao Hua with a hint of doubt in his eyes. Spiritual Master, this is. Xiao Hua raised his hand and pointed to the sky. He smiled and said, could it be that General Sun has forgotten? Back then, when I first met you, it was in the void crack above the Pure Land world. I understand. When Sun Jian heard about the Pure Land world, he couldn't help but feel a burst of excitement. When he heard that this was the place where he first met Xiao Hua, he sighed in his heart. When they met that day, Xiao Hua had only just reached the 4th grade of origin energy. Sun Jian's strength firmly suppressed Xiao Hua's. Now that they met again in the same place, he couldn't even compare to Xiao Hua's back. However, when he thought about his current cultivation, Sun Jian felt grateful to Xiao Hua. If it weren't for Xiao Hua, how could he come back alive? How could he reach the peak of the 8th grade of origin energy? Suddenly, Sun Jian was shocked again. He hurriedly asked, what's the current time in the 3 continents? General Sun doesn't need to worry. Xiao Hua smiled and said, it's only been 200 years since we were forced into the heavenly prison. Good. When Sun Jian heard this, a cold light flashed in his eyes. He bowed and said, Spiritual Master, please rest assured. I will definitely find out the true face of Sun Hao and take revenge for that day. There's no need to rush the matter of revenge. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, your life is the most important. With your current strength, you may not be Sun Hao's opponent. You should first think of a plan to advance and retreat. There's no need for Spiritual Master to worry about this. Sun Jian nodded. Although I disdain this path, it doesn't mean I don't know how to do it. If someone dares to covet the Immortal Emperor's throne, I will definitely protect the Immortal Emperor by any means necessary. Speaking up to here, Sun Jian probed again and asked, I wonder what Spiritual Master plans to do. If possible, can Spiritual Master follow me to the Immortal Palace? With Spiritual Master's methods, you must be an honored guest of the Immortal Palace. Xiao Hua looked at Sun Jian with a smile that wasn't a smile and said, General can decide for the Immortal Emperor that I am an honored guest and not a prisoner? Sun Jian's face was a little embarrassed. He smiled and said, Spiritual Master's view of the Immortal Emperor is too narrow. The Immortal Emperor is definitely not the muddle-headed emperor that the scholarly cultivators speak of. General isn't the Immortal Emperor. How would you know what the Immortal Emperor thinks? Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, one shouldn't have the heart to harm others, but one must have the heart to guard against others. This Xiao can't not be on guard. Moreover, if this Xiao has a grudge with the Immortal Emperor, I'm afraid I won't be able to meet General. If that's the case, it's better not to meet. You and I have traveled in the upper realm and have experienced life and death together. I believe in General's character. If you have any problems, you can come find me. If it's inconvenient for the Immortal Emperor to make a move, this Xiao won't be afraid of anything. Junior thanks Spiritual Master for believing in me. Sun Jian knew that Xiao Hua was speaking from the bottom of his heart and also knew what kind of promise Xiao Hua needed. He bowed and said, Junior's life and cultivation were given by Senior. Junior will definitely not disappoint Senior. Of course, Junior is a subject of the Immortal Palace and often has no choice. Therefore, Junior will definitely keep Senior's secret. Junior will definitely keep it a secret. As for other things, Junior can't not report to the Immortal Emperor truthfully. I hope Spiritual Master can understand. Good. You know more about these things than this Xiao. Xiao Hua flicked his sleeve and helped Sun Jian up. You can decide for yourself. However, to be honest, the heavenly prison is not a place that ordinary cultivators can go. Immortal Emperor Go Chen and the Vairocana revered world sage can't go. If they aren't afraid of death, they can send people in. Spiritual Master must be joking. Sun Jian bitterly smiled and said, what is the heavenly prison? How could Junior not know? Even if the Immortal Emperor knew about this, he would definitely not leak it. On the contrary, Spiritual Master. You are now the top cultivator of the 3 continents. Spiritual Master is a Tao cultivator, so you will definitely have some connections with my immortal palace. Spiritual Master must think clearly. Although Sun Jian didn't say it clearly, Xiaohua understood the meaning in his tone. He nodded and said, "You can go and report to Immortal Emperor Gochen. That year, I once mentioned establishing a Tao sect at the Tongzhou country's blood steel. That day, I was indeed a bit impulsive. However, now that I think about it, I don't have anything to regret. After all, the Tao sect is in a bleak situation under the suppression of the Confucian cultivators. After the trip to the upper realm, General should also know that there are 3,000 Tao cultivators in this world. Not only are there Confucian cultivators and Buddhist sects, my Tao sect is also a branch that cannot be ignored. Therefore, my original intention will not change. As a Tao sect cultivator, I will definitely do my best for the Tao sect. However, since I am in the hidden immortal continent, I will abide by the rules of the hidden immortal continent and will not make things difficult for the immortal palace. After all, I will definitely give face to Immortal Emperor Gochen. However, this Xiao will also say this first. I am willing to accept all open schemes and even conquests. However, if there is any conspiracy or backstabbing, this Xiao will definitely not let it go if I learn of it. At that time, even if I attack the immortal palace, don't blame me for not warning you in advance." Sun Jian smiled bitterly and said in a low voice, "Actually, why does Taoist have to put yourself in the Tao sect? With Taoist's cultivation, you are more than qualified to be an immortal official of Confucian cultivators. However, as long as I offer the 5 Qis unification technique to the immortal emperor, what Taoist can obtain is far beyond what a Tao sect cultivator can obtain. Hehe, what if this old man allows you to enter my fortune gate and make you the vice gate master of my fortune gate? Are you willing?" Xiaohua asked rhetorically. Sun Jian shook his head slightly. There was no way he could answer. At the same time, he also understood what Xiaohua's answer was. He said again, "Junior can report these words to the immortal emperor. As for how the immortal emperor will deal with it, that is his business." However, in Junior's opinion, the immortal emperor will only be courteous to Taoist and will not use weapons. Rest assured, Taoist. Oh. Why? Xiaohua raised his eyebrows and asked curiously. Sun Jian smiled and said, "Junior won't talk about the internal secrets of the Confucian cultivators. Senior is a supreme cultivator of the 3 continents. How long can you stay in the 3 continents? Even if I am an immortal emperor, I will not cause trouble. What the immortal emperor is most concerned about should be Taoist's fortune gate. As for the disciples of the fortune gate, to be honest, they are like brothers to me. Most of them are magnanimous people. I really hope that the disciples of the fortune gate can coexist peacefully with the immortal palace in the future." Chapter 4290. Don't worry. Xiaohua laughed. As long as this old man is in charge of the fortune gate will not be the immortal palace's enemy. If this old man isn't around, then it's not something this old man can worry about. Junior understands. After getting Xiaohua's promise, Sun Jian once again respectfully saluted and said, "There are spatial passages in other parts of the Pure Land that lead to the immortal palace. 200 years shouldn't have changed too much. However, I don't know the spatial tunnel to the hidden immortal continent. If you return to the soaring dragon mountain range, I'm afraid it will be inconvenient." "Your grandmother." Xiaohua helplessly shook his head. "You even know about the soaring dragon mountain range. What other secrets can my fortune gate hide from you? What I know and what the immortal palace knows are 2 different things." Sun Jian smiled and answered without hesitation. "Forget it." Xiaohua waved his hand. "I want to go to the 1,000 Demons Sacred Realm, so I won't be returning to the hidden immortal continent for now." 1,000 Demons Sacred Realm? Sun Wu frowned, thought for a moment, and said, "My immortal palace has a spatial passageway that leads to the 1,000 Demons Sacred Realm. If Senior is willing to go to the immortal palace, there's no need to mention this matter again. This old man doesn't want to make things difficult for you. Xiao Hua waved his hand. At worst, this old man will directly fly over the North and South Seas. When Sun Jian heard that, his brows relaxed and he said with a smile, "That's not necessary. As far as I know, there is a space teleportation formation between the South Sea Dragon Palace and the North Sea Dragon Palace. You only need to go to the South Sea, and you can go directly to the North Sea Dragon Palace from the South Sea Dragon Palace." North Sea Dragon Palace? Xiao Hua pinched his chin and said somewhat meaningfully, this old man had once offended the North Sea Dragon Palace's 7th prince. With senior strength, as long as you don't offend the Dragon King of the North Sea Dragon Palace, a few princes are nothing. Sun Jian smiled, then took out a jade eye from his bosom and respectfully handed it over to Xiao Hua. This is the location of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. There are also some relatively secret records. Senior, please take it. Junior does not have a deep relationship with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Junior's token may be useful, but compared to Senior's strength, Junior's token is only the light of autumn fireflies. I dare not take it out and embarrass myself. General Sun is considerate. Xiao Hua took the jade eyes and looked at it, then put it away. This junior will take his leave. Sun Jian bowed again, asking, "May I ask if Junior can meet the Fortune Gate's junior brothers again?" "Of course." Xiao Hua took out the Kunlun mirror, and a beam of light descended, sucking Sun Jian into it. After a while, Sun Jian was released from the Shenhua continent. At this time, Sun Jian had already put aside his feelings for Xiao Hua, and he bowed to bid farewell to Xiao Hua. He then urged the auspicious cloud to fly somewhere. The Thunderbolt Immortal also came out from Shenhua continent. He looked worriedly in the direction Sun Wu flew in and asked, "Maitreya Buddha is now a Buddha. No one knows his true form except for us. But fellow Taoist, if you let Sun Jian out of the Great Snow Mountain, wouldn't you be giving him something to use against you? How can there be an impenetrable wall in this world?" If he was worried about Sun Jian, he might as well not let him out. As long as he was let out, there was a possibility that the information would be leaked. Sun Jian is a loyal and righteous person, and he has a good relationship with us Fortune Gate disciples. How can we not give him freedom? Xiao Hua said with a smile, moreover, even if the Mahavairakana revered one wants to hide any karma of the 3 continents, it's impossible for him to do it flawlessly. Moreover, the Maitreya Buddha revered one's attainment of the fruit is open and aboveboard. Why should we be afraid of revealing any clues? That's true. We have no ulterior motives, what are we afraid of? The Thunderbolt Immortal laughed and said, however, Sun Jian's words reminded I of something. Since we have returned to the 3 continents, we should plan for the future. Although we are not afraid of the Immortal Palace, if the Immortal Palace makes a move, we can't not be on guard. Okay. Xiao Hua nodded, let's bury a chess piece in the Pure Land world first. I have the same idea. The Thunderbolt Immortal chuckled and followed Xiao Hua. The two of them flew for several days and saw a place with beautiful scenery. Within the range of their divine senses, there were few signs of human habitation. The two of them looked at each other, and there was a meaningful smile in their eyes. Without needing Xiao Hua to do anything, the Thunderbolt Immortal pulled out 30,000 Fortune Gate disciples from the Shenhua mainland and gave them some instructions. There was no need for Xiao Hua and the Thunderbolt Immortal to say anything, and the 30,000 disciples began to set up the formation. The disciples who could come out from the Shenhua mainland were all nascent soul cultivators and above, and each of them had the strength to establish a country in the 3 continents. Among the 30,000 disciples, the one with the highest cultivation had already reached the 6th grade, the void refinement realm. Their strength was enough to make Xiao Hua feel reassured. Therefore, after setting up the formation, Xiao Hua did not delay. He took out the Kunlun mirror and circulated his magic power to release Fu Jiwen and the other disciples. The Fortune Gate disciples had already learned from Sun Jian that they had returned to the 3 continents. When they came out, their faces were filled with joy. After the disciples greeted each other, each of them took a deep breath, as if the air in the 3 continents was fresh and warm. Xiaohua smiled and said, after several twists and turns, Master has finally brought all of you back safely. I believe General Sun has already told all of you that it has only been 200 years since we left. What we have experienced this time is truly unimaginable. Just from the eyes of others, your strength has indeed increased by an unimaginable amount. This is all thanks to Master. Fujiwen and Lu Yi were the first to bow and answer. Seeing that the other disciples were about to bow and thank Xiaohua, Xiaohua hurriedly waved his hand and said, "You don't need to be so polite. Master is your master. If there are any benefits, I will naturally leave them for all of you. Moreover, if you follow Master out, other than opportunities, there will also be calamities. All of you have passed the test of time, which proves that Master has chosen all of you correctly. Master is very comforted. Master called all of you out today to prepare for your return to the hidden immortal mainland, to the soaring Dragon Mountain Range's Fortune Gate. However, before I let all of you go back, Master wants to hear your thoughts. What plans do you have for the future?" Lu Yi and Yu Zhongxuan had long been the heads of a family. How could they not understand what Xiaohua was thinking? The two of them glanced at each other, bowed, and said, "Master should know our temperament, but please rest assured. In the past 200 years, Senior Brother Xiong, Senior Brother Li, and Senior Brother Lan have contributed a lot to the soaring Dragon Mountain Range's Fortune Gate. Although we are fortunate enough to have higher cultivation than our 3 senior brothers, we will not covet some of the Fortune Gate's positions." Wang Bianfei smiled and said, "Other than following Master to cultivate, disciple doesn't care about anything else. Master can rest assured." Yuanya looked at Xiaohua without any intention to speak. Fujiwen also smiled and said, "Master, disciple is a Confucian cultivator. We won't fight for power with Senior Brother Xiong and the others. You can rest assured." Actually. Xiaohua nodded, looking at his disciples and said with a smile, "This old master knows your temperament, so I'm very relieved. However, it is precisely because you are Confucian cultivators, Buddhist sects, Tao sects, sword cultivators, and the dragon tribe that Master is a little worried. The 3 mainlands' forces are intertwined, and you might be used by them. For example, Jiang Hong, if the Heavenly Abode's River Dragon tribe is in trouble and asks for your help, how can Lu Yi not help?" This. Lu Yi looked at Jiang Hong, and both of them showed a difficult expression. "Master." Fujiwen smiled and said, "Disciple and the others are in the 3 mainlands. It is inevitable that some karma will arise. It is impossible to remain untainted. Isn't Master often troubled by these matters? Disciple can't guarantee that we won't be involved in the 3 mainlands' grievances, but Disciple can guarantee that we will put the Fortune Gate's interests first." Yes, Disciple will definitely put the Fortune Gate's interests first. All the disciples answered in unison. Xiaohua nodded with satisfaction, then added, "As long as you all have this intention, Master can rest assured. Also, I want to say that this experience is unprecedented. You guys have experienced the ruins and the primeval wasteland continent. I wonder how you guys feel about it. If you are not strong enough, it's better not to go." Yuanya answered honestly. Wang Bianfei laughed and said, "There are so many treasures in the upper realm. Disciple regrets not taking a few more cosmos bags. If Master has any extra, why don't you give Disciple some more?" Ha ha ha. All the disciples burst into laughter. Forget about the ruins, the desolate mainland was really full of treasures, so many that they were dazzled. What Wang Bianfei said was definitely what they were thinking. When everyone stopped laughing, Fujiwen's heart suddenly moved. Looking at Xiaohua's half-smile, he seemed to have understood something. He bowed and said, "Master, Disciple has never been to the ruins and desolate mainland, so Disciple didn't know what the upper realm was like, and didn't have much confidence in Disciple's cultivation. Now that Disciple has seen the upper realm, Disciple knows how vast it is, and has returned to the 3 mainlands. Although this is Disciple's hometown, Disciple already feels that this place is too narrow. Disciple already has a goal in disciple's cultivation, and disciple is confident that disciple will reach this goal. Disciple will not be burdened by the three mainlands' worldly affairs and ruin disciple's foundation. Jiwen is right. Do you all understand? Xiaohua nodded, and his gaze was like a bolt of lightning as he looked at everyone. Lu Yi and the others came to a sudden understanding when they heard this, and they finally understood what Xiaohua wanted to say. All of them bowed and answered. Don't worry, Master. Disciple completely understands. Otherwise, wouldn't this trip to the upper dimensions have been wasted? With this experiential training, disciple's vision should be much higher than the three mainlands cultivators. Xiaohua said, your cultivation will definitely surpass the majority of the three mainlands cultivators. Therefore, Master doesn't want to see disciples' cultivation delay because of some worldly affairs. Of course, disciples' cultivation isn't a smooth sailing matter. No matter if it's in the ruins, desolate mainland, or the three mainlands, disciple and the others still have a lot of distractions. However, disciple's goal must be firm. Chapter 4291. Actually, it's not just you, even Master has a hard time getting out of the quagmire of these mundane affairs. Although cultivation is a personal matter, it is also a sex matter. For the Fortune Gate, for the Tao sect, Master has to leave more means. The mountain range under your feet, and the busy disciples, is also a Fortune Gate that Master wants to build in the Pure Land. In the future, Master will also establish a sect in the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm, and even other places. Hee hee. Fu Jiwen laughed. With the number of Fortune Gate disciples on the Xinhua continent, it's possible to build 10 more Fortune Gates. Xiaohua rolled his eyes at Fu Jiwen and said, do you think Master is willing to build so many sects? If possible, Master would rather you cultivate in the Xinhua continent and not come out. But in reality, you will definitely be like this old man in the future, reaching a bottleneck in your cultivation and having no choice but to ascend to the immortal world. Master also has to consider for you as soon as possible. Lu Yi and the others naturally understood Xiaohua's painstaking efforts and bowed. Subsequently, Xiaohua left Jiang Hong and Lu Yi behind. The other disciples each led 2,000 disciples back to the soaring Dragon Mountain range on the hidden immortal continent to support the Fortune Gate led by Xiong Yi and the other disciples. However, when the disciples were flying away, Yuanya was a little bashful and actually whispered to the disciples he led to leave first. He wanted to return to the Xinhua continent first. Xiaohua glanced at Yuanya in bewilderment. He did not understand what was going on. Even the Thunderbolt Immortal was bewildered. However, Xiaohua did not say anything. He shook the Kunlun mirror and collected Yuanya. Then, Yu Zhongxuan and the others left first. When Jianghong and Lu Yi saw that Xiaohua had left them behind, they couldn't help but feel anxious. After Yu Zhongxuan and the others left, they hurriedly knelt in the air and begged for forgiveness. Master, disciple knows his mistake, please punish Master. Xiaohua didn't know what they were talking about, but his face was still as calm as water. He asked indifferently, since you know, then tell me, what did you do wrong? Lu Yi knew Xiaohua's temper, and without waiting for Jiang Hong to speak, he had already explained the reason. It turned out that the Yu clan and the Lu clan of Xinhua continent already had some grudges. In order to compete for the title of the #1 aristocratic clan of Xinhua continent, they had fought countless times. Previously, Lu Yi and Yu Zhongxuan had also mentioned this matter to Xiaohua, but Xiaohua didn't care. He only felt that since it was a place with people, there would be conflicts. Although the ancestors of the Yu family and the Lu family were martial brothers, with so many branches and leaves in the family, it was inevitable that their closeness to each other would deteriorate. Fighting was also inevitable, as long as it wasn't too excessive. This time, Lu Yi's report caused Xiaohua's expression to change again. This was because a descendant of the dragon clan of the Lu clan had been defeated by a disciple of the Yu clan because of his bravery. Moreover, this descendant of the dragon clan didn't openly challenge him again. Instead, he used poison to poison this disciple and nearly 100 people from the Yu clan's side branches to death. Although the actions of the Dragon clan's descendants were very secretive, there were no secrets in this world. After the truth was found out by the other branches of the Yu clan, they gathered nearly 1,000 people to attack the Lu clan, a branch of the Dragon clan. The two clans engaged in a chaotic battle, and another 400 people were killed or injured. In the end, this matter alarmed Yu Zhongquan and Lu Yi. The two of them used thunderous means to suppress this chaotic battle, and even sentenced the descendant of the Dragon clan to death. Of course, this matter was suppressed, but the rift between the two clans seemed to be getting bigger and bigger. Yu Zhongquan and Lu Yi didn't dare to report this matter to Xiaohua. They wanted to wait until the Thunderbolt Immortal was in a good mood to tell him first, then report to Xiaohua. But today, Xiaohua actually returned to the 3 continents and even sent out a group of disciples, leaving Lu Yi and his wife alone. Lu Yi had a guilty conscience and immediately confessed. Hearing this, Xiaohua's face was already ashen. However, just as he was about to get angry, the Thunderbolt Immortal smiled and transmitted a message: "Fellow Taoist, don't forget about the heavenly demon. Similarly, don't forget about the fight between the Taoist and Confucian cultivators on the hidden immortal continent. Don't forget about the crushing and killing between the aristocratic families of Confucian cultivators." Alas! Xiaohua sighed. He understood what the Thunderbolt Immortal meant. If there were no humans on the Xinhua continent, then it would be fine. But since there were humans, how could there be no fighting and killing? Moreover, he also put the heavenly demon into the space. Wait for me to get up. Xiaohua flicked his sleeves and helped the two of them up. He said, "Since you two have already dealt with this matter, Master won't say anything else. The population of the Xinhua continent is already large enough, and our Fortune Gate also has countless disciples. Master can't manage your descendants, but you two are absolutely forbidden from killing each other within the next 3 generations." Seeing this, Jiang Hong hurriedly replied, "Master, please don't worry about this. The relationship between us senior and junior brothers is very good. There definitely won't be any gap between us. On the Xinhua continent, other than the Lu family and the Yu family, are there any other families?" Xiaohua slightly nodded and asked. "There are no other families among this disciple's senior and junior brothers, and there are a few among the 3rd and 4th generation disciples, but they are all useless." Jiang Hong replied, knowing everything like the back of her hand. "Then let's support some." Xiaohua reminded in a bad mood, in such a big Xinhua continent, there are only 2 aristocratic families playing around. Isn't it too lonely? Yes, this disciple understands. Jiang Hong was stunned. She didn't expect Xiaohua to give such an order. However, Xiaohua's next sentence reminded her, "If you don't know what to do, go and ask your martial uncle Wen Chu. Confucian cultivators are very good at forming alliances, and even sowing discord is very good." "Yes." Jiang Hong lowered her head and answered. "Other than this, Master has another matter that I might need the 2 of you. That's why I asked you to stay." Xiaohua finally said, "You two return to the Xinhua continent and wait there." Subsequently, Xiaohua took out the Kunlun mirror and sent Jiang Hong and Lu Yi into the space. Fellow Taoist. After receiving the 2, Xiaohua was a little impatient and asked the Thunderbolt Master, "The development of the matter seems to be out of my control." "Hee, fellow Taoist doesn't stay in the space often, so you don't know about these things." The Thunderbolt Master laughed and said, "In fact, this kind of thing happens every day on the Xinhua continent. At first, I was just as confused as you were, but as I watched, I began to realize something. The so-called control doesn't mean you can control everything in the space, but you can control the general trend and direction of the space. As long as there is no world-ending disaster, no large-scale blood sacrifice, and so on, it's fine. We are not gods, so it's impossible for us to control all the details. Oh, of course, perhaps in the future, when fellow Taoist's divine ability reaches a certain level, you can also control such details, then we'll talk about it again." Development is always a trend. Xiaohua nodded. If the space was the same as before, with only spiritual herbs and no people, you and I wouldn't have so many opportunities, and neither of us would be satisfied. The space will always develop, and our strength must also change and improve accordingly. Fellow Taoist, please work hard. The Thunderbolt Master smiled and said, the current space is no longer the space I know. Therefore, fellow Taoist must also work hard. Xiaohua replied with a smile, then looked at the busy Fortune Gate disciples, and the smile on his face gradually faded. He let out a long sigh and fell silent. Why is fellow Taoist sighing? The Thunderbolt Master was puzzled. Naturally, it's because of the future of the Fortune Gate disciples in the space. Xiaohua said in a low voice, when the time comes, we can't send all of them from Shenhua continent to hidden immortal continent, right? Moreover, there are so many people on Shenhua continent, I can't send all of them out. When fellow Taoist ascends? The Thunderbolt Master asked. Yes. Xiaohua nodded. Why can't it be like now? The Thunderbolt Master was still confused. Just stay on Shenhua continent with them. On Shenhua continent. I'm afraid that without ascension, it will affect their cultivation. Xiaohua replied, moreover, we have never been to the immortal world, who knows what it's like? Since there are no problems in the higher realms, what's the problem in the immortal world? Speaking of which, I still don't want to take the risk if I'm not confident. So you want to expand the Fortune Gate in the 3 continents? Yes, it's a backup plan, just in case. It's really troublesome. The Thunderbolt Master smiled bitterly, as the saying goes, success depends on space, failure depends on space. I don't need to think about this matter, should go and set up the transmission array. All right. While speaking, Xiaohua brings the Thunderbolt Venerable and flies in another direction. After flying for tens of thousands of miles, Xiaohua saw a place with clear mountains and clear water. He released his Buddhist awareness and looked around for a long time before asking, fellow Taoist Thunderbolt, what do you think of this place? Very good. The Thunderbolt Master also released his divine sense and looked around before saying, this place is more secluded, it's the most suitable place to set up a transmission array. After saying that, the Thunderbolt Master raised his head and looked at the sky again. He saw that the dark red clouds above the snowy mountain had already moved here with the 2 of them. The dark clouds had already become somewhat transparent, and streaks of dragon-like lightning gradually appeared. Fellow Taoist, do you need I to help you? The Thunderbolt Master asked worriedly. There's no need. If I don't want to attract the Thunder Sound Temple's attention, I can release my divine sense now. Xiaohua said nonchalantly, it won't be too late to deal with this matter after I arrive at a safe place. After saying that, Xiaohua activated his escape technique and the 2 of them flew towards the depths of the earth. When they arrived at a certain place, Xiaohua released his puppets and ordered them to open up space. Xiaohua then handed the Grand Cosmos Teleportation Token to the Thunderbolt Master and said, I'll have to trouble fellow Taoist to set up the transmission array here. This Grand Cosmos Teleportation Token has the Black Wind Ridge's transmission array's divine sense mark. Fellow Taoist can just set up the transmission array between the 2 continents. Rest assured, fellow Taoist, I can even set up a transmission array that can pass through the barrier between the 2 continents. This simple transmission array between the 2 continents is simply a piece of cake for me. The Thunderbolt Master bragged a little as he received the Grand Cosmos Teleportation Token. Chapter 4292. How could Xiaohua not know the pride in the Thunderbolt Immortal's heart? However, he didn't point it out. He only smiled and said, then fellow Taoist can build a teleportation formation here first. Once it's done, head to the 1,000 Demons' sacred realm. Of course, if fellow Taoist can sense space, feel free to enter it first. Oh? Why are you going to the 1,000 Demons' sacred realm, fellow Taoist? Taoist Thunderbolt was rather puzzled. Could it be that there's something wrong with that five-colored demon? Not bad. Xiaohua nodded. That day, I wanted to search the soul of that five-colored monster. Unfortunately, he was one step ahead of me and self-destructed. I couldn't get too many things. However, from the information I've obtained, there seems to be a force in the Thousand Demons sacred realm that's interested in me. I have no choice but to go take a look. Fellow Taoist, aren't you going back to the Soaring Dragon Mountain range first? The Thunderbolt Immortal was even more baffled. Previously, when you asked Fujiwen and the others to return to the hidden immortal continent, I thought that you wanted to stay in the Pure Land world and wait for I to build the teleportation array. Who knew that you were actually going to the Thousand Demons sacred realm? But how long would it take to fly to the Thousand Demons sacred realm? Why don't we wait for I to finish building the teleportation passageway? Fellow Taoist, you can go to Black Wind Ridge through the teleportation passageway before heading to the Thousand Demons sacred realm from there. No need. Xiaohua says with a mysterious smile, I still have some matters to attend to in the South Sea Dragon Palace. Furthermore, Sun Jian has already informed I that there is a teleportation channel between the South Sea Dragon Palace and the North Sea Dragon Palace. Fellow Taoist, have you lost your mind? The Thunderbolt Immortal was greatly alarmed. Fellow Taoist, you have greatly offended the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas in the Stacked Jade Legacy realm. Aren't you throwing yourself into a trap by going there? Aren't you afraid that they'll make a move? That was then and this is now. Xiaohua said with a smile, would the current Xiao still fear the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas? It's not a matter of whether I'm afraid or not. You don't have to be afraid in other places, but in the Dragon Palace, you have to be careful, right? In my opinion, if there's nothing urgent, it's better not to go near the Dragon Palace. The Thunder Immortal advised seriously. I don't seem to have any grudges with the Southern Sea Dragon Palace. Xiaohua smiled and said, I will go and see their attitude first before making a decision. Seeing that Xiaohua had already made up his mind, the Thunderbolt Taoist didn't continue to persuade him. He said, then fellow Taoist should go first. After I finish building the teleportation formation, I'll also rush over to give you a hand. All right. Xiaohua nodded. After a long while, when the puppet had finished digging the space, Xiaohua cupped his hands towards the Thunderbolt Immortal and flew out of the ground towards the South Sea. Xiaohua soared into the sky and immediately used the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven. His flying speed became even faster, and when the surrounding scenery started to blur, pieces of light started to appear before Xiaohua's eyes. Xiaohua understood that he would soon be able to enter a speed that surpassed the lightning escape. Just as Xiaohua's body began to show signs of dispersing, shua, a light sound rang out. The laws of heaven and earth landed on Xiaohua's body and forcefully stopped it from dispersing. The light and shadows around Xiaohua revealed their original appearance. Xiaohua frowned. A bad feeling emerged in his heart and he increased his speed again. After doing this several times, Xiaohua still couldn't reach the state he was in the Great Desolate Continent. Xiaohua unconsciously understood and thought to himself, damn it, it seems that in these three continents, the lightning escape technique should be the end of all escape techniques. The laws of heaven and earth don't allow escape techniques that surpass this speed to appear. It's absolutely impossible for me to cultivate the light escape technique in the cultivation world. However, my current 5-element escape technique is still lacking the wind escape technique to reach the high level. Moreover, the 5-element origin is still lacking the water origin. Even the wood origin and wind origin are not completely fused together because the time I obtained them is too short. Perhaps after I've perfected all of this, I'll try the feeling of being enveloped in light again. Finished thinking, Xiaohua didn't try anymore and urged the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven to fly towards the South Sea. Although he still hadn't reached the realm of being enveloped in light, his lightning escape technique had already surpassed the previous one. When the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven, there was no longer the sound of thunder that previously resounded through the sky. Only lightning could be seen flashing and his figure instantly traveled 1,000 li high up in the sky, the green-red transparent cloud was not much slower than Xiaohua as it chased after him. Not to mention Xiaohua rushing towards the South Sea Dragon Palace, the Maitreya Buddha of the world stepped on a rainbow bridge and crossed the void. Seeing the source of the Buddhist light, many wonderful sounds appeared one after another and many Sanskrit chants sounded. In the distance, there seemed to be an incomparably huge temple emitting Buddhist light that was even more vast than the sea. The Maitreya Buddha of the world knew that this was the Lain Temple of the three continents. The end of the rainbow bridge was below the steps of the temple. However, that temple was completely composed of Buddhist light. There were no Buddhist sons or Buddhist protectors. Even where the Maitreya Buddha of the world's gaze fell, that temple would twist and rotate like falling leaves in the sky. When the Maitreya Buddha of the world turned his head to look at Samantabhadra Bodhisattva beside him, there was also no trace of him. It was as if Samantabhadra Bodhisattva had never existed. The Maitreya Buddha of the world's Buddhist sense swept through the surrounding space again and discovered that this space was filled with strange fine lines. It was like a layer of seal that separated the space of the Lain Temple from the surroundings. Moreover, the Maitreya Buddha of the world felt that his golden body was like nothingness in this space. That originally condensed Buddhist lotus had layers of wind-blown wrinkles. Strange. The Maitreya Buddha of the world was somewhat bewildered. However, he still lifted his foot and landed on the steps of the Lain Temple. Namantabhadra Bodhisattva, Namantabhadra Bodhisattva. Waves of Buddhist chants resounded from the Lain Temple. At the same time, the steps condensed from Buddhist light under the Maitreya Buddha of the world's feet began to rotate. They turned into golden sutra runes in the shape of a swastika. It actually formed a huge whirlpool, sucking the Maitreya Buddha of the world into the space below the Lain Temple. The Maitreya Buddha of the world felt that layers of Buddhist visions flashed past his eyes. Thousands of golden sutra runes intertwined together to form a world that resembled a spider web. When his eyes suddenly lit up, a familiar yet strange voice resounded, Amitabha. Welcome back, junior apprentice brother. When the Maitreya Buddha of the world raised his head, he saw a Mahavira hall in front of him. There were already two Buddha lords standing in front of the hall. Weren't they the Mahavira Buddha of the world and the Dipankara archaic Buddha of the world? Behind the two Buddha lords, there were two bodhisattvas. The Namantabhadra Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was in sight. As for the other Buddha lord, he was also familiar with the Namantabhadra Bodhisattva, the Namantabhadra Wisdom Manjushri. After the two bodhisattvas, more Buddhas, bodhisattvas, and arhats were standing there with their palms together. Namantabhadra Bodhisattva. The Maitreya Buddha of the world put his palms together and bowed. Greetings, senior apprentice brothers. Junior apprentice brother, enter the lotus cleansing pond to cultivate your body first. The Mahavira Buddha of the world's face was filled with joy. He raised his hand and pointed at the Maitreya Buddha of the world's feet. I understand. The Maitreya Buddha of the world looked at his feet. It was a boundless pool of jade water. This jade water didn't have any waves. Millions of golden sutra runes were hidden within this jade water. Every drop of jade water showed the birth and destruction of a small kiliacosm. Above this jade water, there were countless lotuses. These lotuses were all blooming with 9-colored brilliance. His body fell within a pillar of golden light. When this golden light fell within the lotus pond, it covered a total of 81 lotuses. Oh! When the Maitreya Buddha of the world lowered his head, he was a little surprised. Previously, his golden body had already started to turn into nothingness. However, when he reached this place, he was completely composed of lines. The golden sutra from before had completely disappeared. It seemed to have condensed within the lines. However, the Maitreya Buddha of the world didn't hesitate at all. His figure landed on the lotuses. The lotuses suddenly expanded and shone with golden radiance. They grew to a height of more than 80 feet. However, when the lotuses bloomed, the entire lotuses suddenly shook. The foundation connected to the dragon cleansing pond let out strange creaking sounds. There were traces of cracks. Looking at the Maitreya Buddha of the world's golden body, which was covered by the lotuses, it didn't become plump due to the expansion of the lotuses. The Mahavairakana Buddha of the world frowned slightly and turned his head to look at the Dipankara archaic Buddha of the world. Then, the two Buddha lords slightly closed their eyes. However, in just a moment, astonishment appeared in their eyes. After exchanging glances with each other, the Mahavairakana Buddha of the world raised his hand slightly. Buddhist lights shone from his hand, which instantly enveloped the entire dragon cleansing pond. There were only 3 world lords left in front of the dragon cleansing pond. Junior apprentice brother. The Mahavairakana Buddha of the world asked, of our Buddhism's golden body 9 transformations, junior apprentice brother, are you at the first transformation? That's right. The Maitreya Buddha of the world nodded calmly. Junior apprentice brother's exquisite leaf sutra doesn't seem to have been completely cultivated? The Dipankara archaic Buddha of the world continued asking. That's right. The Maitreya Buddha of the world nodded. This disciple came from the Buddhism's last days. I didn't obtain the complete exquisite leaf sutra. Amitabha. So that's how it is. How sad, how wonderful. Compassion appeared in the eyes of the Mahavairakana Buddha of the world and the Dipankara archaic Buddha of the world, as if they had seen through the cause and effect of Jiang Luer's Buddha fruit being snatched away by Buddha Bodhi. The Mahavairakana Buddha of the world looked at the Maitreya Buddha of the world's Buddha form and said, the Maitreya Buddha of the world is the future Buddha Lord. The exquisite leaf sutra he cultivates is a martial art of the future world. If you want to cultivate the future world, you must first cultivate the past world and the present world. Therefore, the exquisite leaf sutra you obtained isn't incomplete. It's incomplete. If you want to cultivate the exquisite leaf sutra to perfection, you must first cultivate the past and the present. In other words, the missing content of the exquisite leaf sutra doesn't exist in this world. The Dipankara archaic Buddha of the world continued, instead, it exists in the hands of the past Buddha Lord and the present Buddha Lord. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Only now did the Maitreya Buddha of the world understand. The 2 missing pieces of golden leaves of the exquisite leaf sutra pagoda couldn't be found outside of the Thunderclap temple. Unless the Maitreya Buddha of the world obtained them from the past Buddha Lord and the present Buddha Lord after attaining fruition. Chapter 4293. Please wait for a moment, junior apprentice brother. I'll give you the part of the present world that I'm in charge of. A piece of gold leaf flew out from the swastika between the eyebrows of the Mahavairakana Buddha. The Buddhist light on the gold leaf flickered. It was the boundless aura of the Buddhist kingdom. When the gold leaf landed in front of the Mahavairakana Buddha said, Junior brother, please listen to me after you get the cultivation method. Namo Mahavairakana. The Mahavairakana Buddha didn't mind and nodded. He pointed at the golden leaf, and it disappeared immediately. He said, please speak, senior apprentice brother. Don't worry. It won't be too late to tell you after the Dipankara Buddha gives you the part of the past world. The Mahavairakana Buddha said with a smile. Buddha. At this moment, the Dipankara Buddha suddenly said, have you thought it through? If it's senior apprentice brother, what would you do? The Mahavairakana Buddha didn't answer but asked instead. I understand your intentions, revered one of the world. The Dipankara Buddha didn't answer but smiled. Another golden leaf appeared from the Mahavairakana Buddha symbol between his eyebrows and fell into the Mahavairakana Buddha's hand. After the golden leaf disappeared, the Mahavairakana Buddha said, Mahavairakana Buddha. You've achieved enlightenment. You won't enter the cycle of reincarnation and fall into the secular world. Your golden body is clean and your Buddha heart is stable. You won't be fated with the secular world anymore. I congratulate you. However, your golden body has just reached the first stage and hasn't gone through the first transformation. To live as long as the heavens and become immortal, you still have to go through 9 transformations to reach perfection. Of course, your foundation is very good. As long as your cultivation method reaches perfection, you'll be able to reach the living Buddha realm. You won't be far from the Buddha kingdom's guidance, going through the first transformation of the golden body, and reaching the 9-layered Buddha land. I understand. Thank you for your reminder. The Mahavairakana Buddha put his palms together and said. However, your golden body has merged with the karma and merit of your previous incarnation. This is a test for you, and it's also an opportunity. If you can pass the karma, you'll be able to achieve the 9 transformations of the golden body. The Mahavairakana revered Buddha changed the topic and said, however, according to what I know on a whim, junior brother, may harm Lain Temple because of the heart tribulation. Junior brother, I hope you can remember what I said today. Cultivate your Buddhist heart and scrub the mirrors diligently. Don't let the demonic tribulation get close to you. Hiss. The Maitreya Buddha sucked in a breath of cold air. He frowned at the 2 revered beings and asked curiously, Senior brothers, if that's the case, why did you still give me the cultivation method? Amitabha. The Mahavairakana revered Buddha's face showed mercy as he said, what belongs to junior brother is junior brother. I will not spoil junior brother's cultivation because of a possible heart tribulation. Once junior martial brother's divine ability gradually matures, I'm sure you'll understand my painstaking efforts. Amitabha. The bitterness on the Dipankara archaic Buddha's face intensified. He pressed his palms together and said, I hope that junior apprentice brother will remember the words of the World Lord today. The Mahavairakana revered Buddha frowned for a moment. Then, he shook his head slightly and said, Revered Buddha, I've thought of all kinds of possibilities. However, I still came up with nothing. I don't know why I would harm the Lain Temple. Amitabha. Junior apprentice brother, you don't have to think too much. We Buddha lords are still humans. Before we attain the 9 transformations golden body, it's impossible for us not to make any mistakes. I'm only feeling it in my heart. It might not come true. The Mahavairakana revered Buddha smiled and said, when that day comes, junior apprentice brother, just remember what I said today. You don't have to think too much. Revered Buddha, I'll remember what you said today. The Mahavairakana revered Buddha bowed and answered. Amitabha, Amitabha. The Mahavairakana revered Buddha and the Dipankara archaic Buddha both pressed their palms together. Then, as the Mahavairakana revered Buddha raised his finger, lights and shadows appeared once again. The Mahavairakana revered Buddha smiled and said, Mahavairakana revered Buddha, please enter the lotus cleansing pond to reconstruct your current body. Thank you, revered Buddha. The Mahavairakana revered Buddha answered and stepped into the lotus cleansing pond from the lotus. Gurgle. As the Mahavairakana revered Buddha's golden body entered the lotus cleansing pond, bubbles appeared on the jade water. Within the bubbles, billions of small kiliacosms were born and swarmed into the Mahavairakana revered Buddha's golden body. Rumble. A thunderous sound resounded. Before the Mahavairakana could walk out of the lotus cleansing pond, the power of faith had already emerged from the void and continuously poured into the Mahavairakana revered Buddha's golden body. The Buddha radiance behind the golden body flourished. The scene of the Namo Mahavairakana Samantabhadra reconstructing his current body appeared once again. However, the momentum was several times greater. When the Mahavairakana revered Buddha's golden body expanded to 100 feet in size, the lotus platform beneath his feet had also reached the 10th stage. Only then did the golden body of the Mahavairakana revered Buddha fly out of the lotus cleansing pond. Namo Amitabha, Namo Dipankara archaic Buddha, Namo Mahavairakana, the 3 revered Buddhas stepped onto the Thunder Sound Temple's Buddhist platform, and waves of Buddhist chants resounded. Thousands of Buddhist lights rushed out from the Thunder Sound Temple, sprinkling all over the Pure Land. Within each temple, the previously empty seat of the future Buddha Lord gave birth to the image of the Mahavairakana revered Buddha within the Buddhist lights. This Buddha statue exposed his chest, and a smile hung on his face. The Mahavairakana revered Buddha has returned. When the Buddhist lights sprinkled all over the place, Xiaohua had yet to leave the Pure Land. Seeing the Buddhist lights catching up to him, Xiaohua's figure stopped in midair. The expression on his face was a little strange, as if he had lost something in his heart. This little monk's fate with Buddhism is indeed deep. Wen Chu flew out. Looking at the Buddhist lights dancing in the sky and the entire Pure Lands world filled with joy and jubilation, he couldn't help but sigh, I'm the first to cultivate. Although I'm the strongest now, I still haven't obtained any positive results. TSK. The Thunderbolt Immortal also flew out and said unhappily, You've already been chosen by all the sages, Wen Chu. How can you say you haven't obtained any positive results? Don't tell me you want the Immortal Emperor to give the throne to you? Wen Chu said with a smile, Immortal friend, you don't know. We Confucian cultivators have a saying, if you learn both civil and martial arts, you can sell your goods to the imperial family. Many Confucian cultivators have different cultivation goals from the Taoist sections. They are all racking their brains to enter the Immortal Palace. I know about this. You told me a lot in the past. The Thunderbolt Immortal waved his hand and said, Don't tell me you've become so unscrupulous now. Do I need to? I just feel that this little monk's luck is too good. He ran a little faster than me. Wen Chu seemed to be somewhat disdainful. Xiao Hua smiled and waved his hand, saying, Everyone has their own fate. There's no need to envy others. As long as we work hard, we'll reap the rewards. After saying that, Xiao Hua's figure flew again. He flew towards the distant place where the mist was faintly discernible. In the Lei Yin temple, thousands of Buddhas were resting. The sound of Buddha gradually faded into the void. The heavenly flowers also slowly disappeared in the sky. After the bustling scene, the three Buddha lords and revered ones had smiles on their faces. Their gazes were filled with benevolence, as if they could see through the void and see the many small worlds. After a while, Mahavarakana revered one said, Junior brother, how do you feel when you first entered the Lei Yin temple? Revered one, when I arrived at the Lei Yin sacred ground, I realized that the sacred ground is the source of faith and the beginning of Buddha's light. Attaining the fruit is the end of cultivation, but it's also the beginning of cultivation. Our Buddhism is completely different from the Confucian cultivators, Taoist sects, and even the demon race's cultivation. The 9 transformations golden body, every transformation is the tempering of a world. Every transformation of the golden body is also the suffering of a person's life. After the 9 transformations, the number of golden bodies is comparable to a huiyuan. This kind of perfect realm is the true cultivation method. Junior brother is still wrong. Mahavarakana revered one said with a smile. Maitreya Buddha raised his eyebrows and asked curiously, Disciple doesn't know, please enlighten me. In different cultivation, in different life, in different tempering, in different golden body. Mahavarakana revered Buddha said indifferent 4 times consecutively. Hearing this, the Buddha light around Maitreya revered Buddha shone brightly. Within the light behind him, small worlds were born, junior apprentice brother. The Dipankara archaic Buddha smiled and said, You've just obtained the exquisite leaf scripture. Today, you've also obtained the Thunder Sound Temple's origin of Buddha light and the origin of faith. You still need to carefully comprehend them. Namo Maitreya, disciple understands. Thank you, senior brothers. Namo Maitreya Buddha's body slowly faded and finally disappeared. Even the previous shadow was completely gone. Seeing that the Maitreya Buddha World Lord was in seclusion, the Dipankara archaic Buddha World Lord glanced at the Mahavarakana World Lord and said, World Lord, I remember you saying that the Maitreya Buddha descended upon the 3 continents only a few hundred years ago, right? Yes, it should be around 400 years ago. The Mahavarakana revered Buddha naturally knew what the Dipankara archaic Buddha World Lord wanted to say. With no emotions on his face, he calmly replied, I didn't expect this junior apprentice brother to attain the Buddha fruit of the future Buddha Lord, one of the 3 supreme Buddha Lords in just 500 years of cultivation. The past world has already decayed, while the present world is still blooming. Only the future world is still budding. Among the 3 supreme Buddha Lords, only the Buddha fruit of the future Buddha Lord has the possibility of a change of Buddha's position. The Dipankara archaic Buddha World Lord said softly, however, this possibility is really minuscule. I don't understand. Why did the previous Maitreya Buddha World Lord give up on this Buddha fruit? Of course, cultivation and Buddha fruit don't matter. However, to attain the golden body and live as long as the heavens, is something that all beings in the world must pursue. If the previous Maitreya Buddha World Lord didn't give it up on his own accord, then something must have happened. His 9 lifetimes of merit and karmic hindrances couldn't be tainted by him anymore. Therefore, he had no choice but to give this Buddha fruit to someone else. The Mahavairakana revered Buddha World Lord frowned slightly, and his tone changed. That's what I wanted to say. The Dipankara archaic Buddha World Lord nodded. There are many Buddha fruits, but not many Buddha seats. The only Buddha seats that could stand on par with the Maitreya Buddha World Lord are the Namo Dipankara archaic Buddha and the Namo Vairocana Buddha. Since this junior apprentice brother had no choice but to give up on the Maitreya Buddha fruit, he would no longer have the chance to attain the 3 supreme Buddha seats, unless he tampered with his karmic hindrances. Chapter 4294. That's impossible. The Mahavairakana Buddha World Lord shook his head without hesitation and said, the current Mahavairakana Buddha World Lord will take all of his karmic hindrances and merits for himself, not giving him any chance. Moreover, the current Mahavairakana Buddha World Lord chose his Buddha form instead of his original form to prevent such a mistake. It also eliminated the possibility of him having such a plan. It's a pity that the great snowy mountain was shrouded by the phenomena of attaining fruition. Even with our abilities, we couldn't see what was happening inside. The Dipankara archaic Buddha World Lord's voice became softer and softer. The Mahavairakana Buddha World Lord answered, although we don't know the process, we already know the result. I thought that Xuanzang was Ananda's reincarnation and arranged for him to attain the sutra praying in nirvana. However, I didn't expect him to be the current fleshly body of the Mahavairakana Buddha World Lord. Moreover, he had attained fruition in the great snowy mountain small exquisite temple before returning to the thunder sound temple. However, the current Namo Mahavairakana Buddha World Lord snatched his Buddha position away. His Buddha fruit was taken away, but he cultivated the Heart Sutra of Prajnaparamita and blocked Ananda's path to Buddhism. The billions of merits from sutra seeking in nirvana helped him. When he arrived at the town of longevity, it would be the time for him to attain fruition, and his merits would be worthy of the Buddha fruit. However, I'm confused. Where's Ananda? Yeah. Where's Ananda? The Dipankara archaic Buddha World Lord's face was filled with bitterness. The sutra praying in nirvana was originally arranged for Ananda. However, who knew that Zhang Luer, who cultivated the Prajnaparamita Heart Sutra, wasn't Ananda at all? Instead, it was the Namo Mahavairakana Buddha World Lord who was born at the same time. The 2 World Lords had arranged a lot of things, and it could be said that they were all done for someone else. It was no wonder that the Mahavairakana Buddha World Lord, who was known to have all-seeing eyes, felt depressed. After a while, the Dipankara archaic Buddha World Lord asked again. The 3 continents of the Pramitha world suddenly appeared, and they had disappeared for the past 200 years. Who from the Holy Light world had descended upon the 3 continents? I'm afraid that it has something to do with the Holy Light world. I wondered if this Maitreya Buddha of the world. Although Maitreya Buddha of the world seems to be acting against my Lain temple, he is not from the Holy Light world. He has no karma with the Holy Light world at all. Mahavairakana Buddha of the world shook his head. Otherwise, I would not have given him the current exquisite leaf sutra. This unfavorable action is probably related to the attainment of pureness, right? The Dipankara archaic Buddha World Lord asked with his eyes closed. Mahavairakana nodded, that's right. 2 rivals who were vying for the position of the future Buddha Lord had appeared in Lain Temple at the same time. There was bound to be a fierce battle. Just wait and see. After saying that, Mahavairakana closed his eyes, and the Buddhist light around him gradually weakened. Within the light behind him, the endless river of faith flowed. In the incomparably vast southern sea, Xiaohua's figure was high up in the sky. In the dark night, other than the roaring of the waves in his ears, there was only the howling of the sea breeze. There was no moon hanging high up in the sky, nor were there any specks of starlight. Layers of dark clouds covered everything that Xiao Hua's eyes could see. Woo! A layer of huge waves appeared around Xiao Hua's figure. After falling into the sea's surface, another row of waves surged into the distance like a mountain ridge. Several large fishes leaped out from the waves, and their pale white bellies were particularly eye-catching in the darkness. Xiao Hua released his divine sense and looked around. Then, he smiled with relief. Since I'm here, no one will notice me. Moreover, the night is dark and the wind is strong. It's the best time to kill people. I'll kill a few people to see. While speaking, rumble. A few faint traces of lightning appeared in the dark clouds. The sea breeze intensified again, and raindrops fell with a swish-swish sound. The storm that had been brewing for a long time finally fell. Boom. Xiao Hua patted his head, and the pressure that he had been suppressing since returning to the 3 continents was released once again. His divine sense penetrated the dark clouds high up in the sky and touched the green-red transparent lightning that had been following Xiao Hua. Boom boom boom. Just as Xiao Hua released his pressure, the green-red lightning immediately roared like a group of dragons that had broken free of their reins. It enveloped an area of 10,000 li, and the stormy dark clouds were instantly destroyed by this lightning. The green-red lightning carried the will of heaven and earth, and mercilessly crossed the space and landed on Xiao Hua, who was sitting cross-legged on the surface of the sea. Namo Maitreya Buddha. The corner of Xiao Hua's mouth rose. He understood very well that his Mahayana lightning tribulation was past in the heavenly prison, and the lightning tribulation there was not complete. The ruins and chaos continent that he had experienced later were all from the upper realm, and there was no lightning tribulation. Even if there was lightning, it was different from the 3 continents. And now that he had returned to the 3 continents, he had to bear the brunt of the lightning tribulation and completely complete the transformation of the Mahayana realm. Previously on the snowy mountain, in order to not affect Namo Maitreya Buddha's enlightenment, Xiao Hua had been suppressing his cultivation. Now that he was here, there was no one, and there were no sea beasts within 10,000 li. Wasn't this the time for him to pass the remaining lightning tribulation? Fortunately, I have already experienced most of the tribulation in the heavenly prison, so the remaining lightning tribulation won't affect too much. Just as Xiao Hua's thoughts were born, the lightning had already landed, hitting his bronze avatar. The sun rose from the place where the sea met the sky. The endless sunlight passed through the rising water vapor and fell on the blue waves. The orange-red color dyed the clear sky and the water surface, and an indescribable vitality was born from this halo. Above the clear sky, there were traces of dark clouds that had not completely dissipated. Above the blue waves, there was a chaotic whirlpool, and all kinds of debris from the bottom of the sea mixed with bubbles were flowing around the whirlpool. In addition to the saltiness of the sea breeze, there was also a strong smell of smoke and fire, which was the remnants of the lightning tribulation. At this time, dozens of days had already passed. Dozens of days of lightning tribulation, as Xiao Hua thought, was not particularly dangerous. Xiao Hua passed it without difficulty, and the harvest of the lightning tribulation was obviously huge. Xiao Hua's nascent soul had absorbed some of the primordial purple qi in his body, and his realm had already begun to touch the final tribulation of the scattered soul realm. At the same time, his own realm of Taoism had also crossed into the so-called tribulation-passing realm. However, at this time, Xiao Hua had no time to be happy. His figure stood in mid-air, swallowing a mouthful of sun essence, and his face revealed a trace of embarrassment. It was not difficult to find the South Sea from the Western Paradise, but to find the South Sea Dragon Palace in the South Sea was a troublesome matter. Xiao Hua wanted to train his sense of direction, and in his hand, he held the jade eyes given by Sun Jian to find the Dragon Palace in the vast South Sea. Xiao Hua had some feeling, but seeing the storm in front of him, and in a place where there was no one, Xiao Hua simply passed the lightning tribulation that had been following him in the sky. However, after passing the lightning tribulation, Xiao Hua found that he could not find the same feeling as before. Even with the jade eyes given by Sun Jian, it was difficult to find the South Sea Dragon Palace. Forget it. Xiaohua simply put away the jade eyes, took out the Kunlun mirror, and released Jiang Hong. As soon as Jiang Hong came out of the space, she bowed and looked around very sensitively, and asked curiously, "Master, this is the South Sea, what are you doing in the South Sea?" Xiaohua did not know whether to laugh or cry. He had been flying for a long time, but he could not find the direction of the South Sea. His disciple was good. As soon as she came out, she did not hesitate at all and immediately recognized that it was the South Sea. A human and a dragon, there was no way to compare. Xiaohua was too lazy to ask Jiang Hong how she knew it was the South Sea. He only asked, "Jiang Hong, do you know where the South Sea Dragon Palace is?" Of course, this disciple knows. Jiang Hong pursed her lips and smiled. Although the South Sea Dragon Palace is a secret to ordinary dragons, it is nothing to my heavenly abode river. Take me there. Xiaohua ordered, just the general area is enough, you don't have to face the South Sea Dragon Palace personally. This disciple is not afraid of AO concrete now. Jiang Hong replied confidently. This is not a matter of whether you are afraid or not. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "We have left the three mainlands for more than 200 years, who knows what relationship your heavenly abode river has with the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. If you rashly get involved, you might end up like a dog instead of a tiger. This disciple will listen to Master." Jiang Hong smiled and said, "This disciple is now a Fortune Gate disciple and Lu Yi's wife. In fact, this disciple has nothing to do with the heavenly abode river. It is not up to you to say that it has nothing to do with you. Your identity is there, it is easy for people to use it as an excuse to make a fuss." Xiaohua smiled and said to Jiang Hong as he flew with her. After flying for more than 10 days, they saw more than 10 pillars of water shooting out from the sea in front of them. They turned into splashes in midair and slowly fell back down. Huge whales poked their huge bodies out of the sea. Hundreds of unknown fishes, each several tens of feet long, lined up in a row and leaped out of the sea. Their fins unfolded, forming thin fleshy wings that supported the fishes as they glided through the air. Then, with a puff-puff sound, which seemed to be cheerful, came from the fishes' mouths. Jiang Hong stopped and pointed into the distance. She bowed and said, "Master, about 2,000 li in that direction, you will enter the South Sea Dragon Palace's territory. This 2,000 li area is one of the South Sea Dragon Palace's layers of defense." When this disciple sneaked in, it was the Blue Waves Barren Water Grand Formation. This disciple's cultivation was shallow at that time, and after coming into contact with it, I realized that I was no match for it and escaped with the elder. I don't know if it is still the same Grand Formation. Generally speaking, there are no patrolling soldiers outside the Grand Formation. This disciple did not notice any soldiers chasing after us that day. However, once you reach the core of the Grand Formation or enter the defensive layer, there will be patrolling yikshaws patrolling the sea. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and looked into the distance. It was also calm. He nodded and said, "When I saved you back then, I rode on the dragon boat of the North Sea Dragon Palace. The North Sea Dragon Palace also has some similar defenses." "Yes, Master." Jiang Hong said, "The Dragon Palace of the Four Seas is the center of the Dragon Clan's defense of the Four Seas. Generally, the Sea Clan cannot casually approach the Dragon Palace. Even the majority of the Dragon Palace's defensive formations are Xiantian. Even if the Dragon Palace's crown prince enters and leaves the Dragon Palace, he cannot only rely on tokens. He can only rely on dragon boats and other weapons of the Dragon Clan. Ordinary patrolling envoys can only be sent in and out by the Dragon Palace's guards at specific times." Chapter 4295. At this point, Jiang Hong smiled and said, "Of course, when one's strength reaches master's level, he is already a target of the Dragon Palaces of the Four Seas. The dragon kings of the four seas will definitely give him a token such as a dragon pendant. Once Master comes within 100,000 miles of the dragon palace with the dragon pendant, the dragon kings will sense it and immediately come out to greet you. There is no need to break through these defenses. On the three continents, other than the mysterious Grand Mist Ancestor, I'm afraid there is no Taoist cultivator with a 9th grade essence force. Who knows what kind of face the Dragon King of the South Sea will have when he sees me? Xiaohua shrugged and said, "You go back to the Xinhua continent first. I will go and take a look." "Yes, Master. If you need anything, feel free to call me out." On the Xinhua continent, the descendants of the Dragon clan are not necessarily inferior to the dragon palaces of the four seas. Jiang Hong replied heroically. "Although the Lu clan is the #1 family in the Xinhua continent, my disciple, don't forget how long the dragon palaces of the four seas have existed in the three continents. You only know the situation after the fall of the Heavenly Abode River. I'm afraid you don't know how the Heavenly Abode River used to be. The dragon palaces of the four seas control the four seas. Sometimes, they even look down on the Dragon Island. Their foundation. I don't need to say anything more, right?" Xiaohua said earnestly. Jiang Hong hurriedly lowered her head and said, "Yes, disciple understands." After Jiang Hong returned to the Xinhua continent, Xiaohua transformed into a rainbow and broke through the sky. In just a moment, he had arrived at the place that Jiang Hong had pointed out. Xiaohua released his divine consciousness, and indeed, it was as Jiang Hong had said. In the space tens of thousands of miles in front of him, there was an indescribable ripple of light. This ripple of light was condensed into strands like water vapor, and every strand of light carried an indescribable might. What was special was that these ripples of light floated in a large area without any pattern, and there was no gap at all. There weren't any fishes or seabirds approaching this space. Even the clouds high up in the sky had tactfully fled. The scorching sun that had already risen high up in the sky shone down directly, distorting the light curtain in this space into several sections. Heh. Xiaohua's divine sense swept over, but was blocked by this wave of light. He didn't forcefully activate his divine sense, but instead laughed coldly. If it was in the past, he would most likely activate his divine sense and test the power of this formation. But now, why should he personally break the formation? With a wave of Xiaohua's hand, the huge thunderbolt flashed with lightning and landed in the air with a rumbling sound. Its powerful aura caused the sea surface to cave in. The sea breeze was also suppressed by the thunderbolt and became silent. Xiaohua's figure landed on the thunderbolt. His hands rubbed together, and streaks of crystal light fell into the thunderbolt. They turned into rays of light and rose from the edge of the thunderbolt, protecting the entire thunderbolt. Then, with a loud rumbling sound, the thunderbolt began to slowly rush into the formation. Boom! Without waiting for the thunderbolt to get close to the formation, the sharp lightning in front of the thunderbolt had already pierced into it. But, within a few miles of the thunderbolt, a trembling sound could be heard. Huge crystal-like crystals began to pile up at an extremely fast speed. Not to mention that the cultivator's body would be smashed into meat paste by these huge crystals. Even the thunderbolt's lightning was extremely shaken by these crystals. The thunderbolt's lightning that acted as the vanguard was annihilated after smashing a dozen or so crystals. Interesting. The corner of Xiaohua's mouth slightly raised. The transcendence energy that was sent into the thunderbolt had begun to slow down, and the thunder pool inside the thunderbolt had already been activated, causing the thunderbolt's speed to become even faster. Boom boom. With an unstoppable force, the thunderbolt rushed into the crystal. The huge crystal was directly smashed into pieces by the thunderbolt, and these pieces were turned into pure water-type spiritual chi of heaven and earth in the thunderbolt's lightning. And, as the thunderbolt crashed into the crystal, more and more crystals were born. Within a range of thousands of miles, it condensed into a castle-like defense. This defensive castle was made of solid crystals. It seemed to be indestructible, but in front of the thunderbolt, this sturdiness was so pale. Wherever the thunderbolt rushed past, the neat crystal disintegrated, and a huge trembling sound resounded in the space of thousands of miles. Woo-woo. After the thunderbolt rushed in for hundreds of miles, the surrounding space was completely filled with shattered crystals. At this time, a strange wind suddenly appeared from the void near the thunderbolt. Waves of light blue astral wind appeared on the surface of the sea. Wherever the astral wind passed, everything was frozen, whether it was the spiritual chi of heaven and earth or the shattered crystals. Even the dazzling lightning revealed a pale color. The astral wind came and went quickly, but the space within 1,000 miles turned into a solid ice ball. The thunderbolt was trapped in the ice ball. Looking at the lightning through the ice ball, it was like looking at fireworks at night. Xiaohua stood on the thunderbolt, not in a hurry to activate the thunderbolt. In his ears, after the thunderbolt was frozen, the entire thunder pool let out a roar. Thick bolts of lightning coiled around the thunderbolt like old vines, and the powerful force of the thunderbolt struggled to break free from the confinement of the astral wind. Gotcha! In front of the thunderbolt, where the huge bolts of lightning collided, a crack appeared on the huge ice ball. Once this crack appeared, it immediately spread out in all directions. In just a moment, the ice ball that was thousands of miles in size was covered with cracks. Boom! Like the eruption of magma, the lightning bolts actually turned into liquid and rushed out, exploding the entire ice ball into pieces. The thunderbolt broke through the ice ball's blockade, and like a sharp knife, it directly pierced into the center of the array. The thunderbolt only flew 100 miles forward, and the entire sea began to boil again. Large and small water columns rushed out from the bottom of the sea, mixed with many reefs, and rushed towards the thunderbolt. Boom boom. The nearly 10,000 kilograms of huge rocks with the impact of the sea waves smashed the thunderbolt, causing it to tremble again. Countless bolts of lightning sprinkled down, and the thunderbolt's pitch-black hull was revealed in the impact. Roar roar. Fine dragon patterns actually appeared on the hull of the thunderbolt. These dragon patterns covered the surface of the thunderbolt, and strange dragon roars came from the patterns. The dragon tattoo blocked all the attacks. The entire lightning bolt merely paused for a moment before it roared wildly again. Like a crazy sea beast, lightning reappeared. It dragged its swaying tail as it charged into the depths of the sea under the ambush of countless water pillars. Enemy attack, enemy attack. The impact of the thunderbolt's impact was so great that it activated the arrays within several thousand miles. The Yikshaws who were patrolling the sea turned pale with fright. They fled while sending messages to the Dragon Palace. At the same time, many shrimp soldiers and crab generals rushed out from the bottom of the sea, each holding a weapon, and lined up neatly on the surface of the sea, waiting to meet the enemy. Boom! The thunderbolt broke through the sky, and its huge hull blocked the sunlight. Its shadow covered the surface of the sea, and also some members of the oceanic race. Seeing such a huge flying boat, and the might of the flying boat that made people tremble, all the members of the oceanic race were stunned. At this time, Xiaohua's thin and tall figure flew out from the thunderbolt, and he released part of his pressure. His gaze swept through the crowd of oceanic race, and he looked into the distance, and he said indifferently, "This old man is Xiaohua of the Tao sect. Today, I have come to pay a visit to the South Sea Dragon King." Hiss. Although Xiaohua's figure was small, his aura far surpassed that of the thunderbolt. He stood in front of the thunderbolt, and he had already taken away the dazzling light of the thunderbolt. As soon as Xiaohua's words came out, under the powerful pressure, all the members of the oceanic race found it difficult to stand on the surface of the sea, and they fell into the sea one after another. Xiaohua didn't pay attention to these members of the oceanic race, and he only narrowed his eyes, looking forward. He saw that the sea inside the array was no different from the rest of the sea, but this sea was glittering with golden light, and a palace that was 10,000 miles in size was floating on the surface of the sea. This palace was very huge, and it was similar to the palace Xiaohua saw on the Dragon Island. Just the palace gate was 10,000 feet in size, and those thick pillars were like mountain peaks. In front of the palace, there was a huge palace gate, and on the high signboard that seemed to break through the sky, there were two strange characters written on it. Xiao Hua's gaze swept over, and a voice in the dragon language appeared in his mind. It was the two words, South Sea. However, Xiao Hua faced this imposing palace, and he only gave it a glance, and then looked at the stairs in front of the palace gate. Those stairs seemed to lead to the palace gate above the sea, but in Xiao Hua's divine sense, there was a huge whirlpool that led straight to the bottom of the sea. If Xiao Hua's divine sense wasn't strong enough, he might not have discovered the strangeness. After seeing all this, Xiao Hua frowned. After all, he had already revealed the strength of a high-level cultivator. The Dragon King of the South Sea Dragon Palace might not come out to greet him, but the Dragon Generals of the Dragon Palace should have come out, right? But at this time, not even a Dragon General with some strength had appeared. Humph. Xiao Hua coldly snorted, and withdrew his pressure. He also withdrew the thunder boat with a flick of his sleeve, and asked somewhat angrily, "What? Could it be that the South Sea Dragon Palace doesn't welcome this Xiao? This little one greets Dragon Master." Just as Xiao Hua's voice fell, a sea patrolling yiksha flew out from under the sea, and somewhat trembled as he kowtowed in front of this Xiao. "This little one has already sent a subordinate to report to the Dragon Palace. Please wait a moment, Dragon Master." Dragon Master? Hee, this Xiao actually forgot. This Xiao also has the title of Dragon Master. Xiao Hua stared blankly for a moment, then he smiled and nodded. Not long after he came out from the Dragon Island, he fell into the heavenly prison. After tens of thousands of years of wandering, he had already forgotten this title on the Dragon Island. Is your Dragon King at home? Xiao Hua originally had a casual temperament. Seeing the sea patrolling yiksha being so respectful to him, he didn't put on airs and casually asked. The sea patrolling yiksha hesitated for a moment, and replied, "This little one doesn't know the whereabouts of my Dragon King, so I also don't know if the Dragon King is in the Dragon Palace." "What about the Dragon Generals of the South Sea?" Xiao Hua asked again. The sea patrolling yiksha was even more hesitant. After all, Xiao Hua wasn't of the dragon race. Although he had the title of Dragon Master, the sea patrolling yiksha didn't dare to tell all the secrets of the South Sea Dragon Palace to Xiao Hua. Humph. Xiao Hua coldly snorted again, and suddenly raised his head, looking at the palace in the sky. Hearing Xiao Hua's anger, the sea patrolling yiksha hurriedly bowed and said, "Dragon Master, please calm down. Dragon Master, please calm down." Chapter 4296. Xiao Hua was not angry at the hesitation of the patrolling yikshas. He had noticed that someone was spying on the Dragon Palace, but when he scanned the place with his divine sense, it was empty, and he did not find anything. But what Xiao Hua did not know was that at the bottom of the sea under the Dragon Palace, a bloody scene had just unfolded in a huge palace. This palace was similar to Ao Xing's palace. There was a high platform at the front, and a huge golden table was placed on top of it. Behind the golden table was a huge mattress. This mattress was transparent, and there were many colorful crystal beads embedded in it. The light of these crystal beads lingered around each other, making it look like a beautiful mobile. There were no dragons on the high platform, only two armored dragons standing proudly in front of the golden table. Below the high platform was the main hall, and on both sides, there were a dozen or so small golden tables. On these golden tables, there were some spirit fruits, wine, and food. In particular, in the corner of the wine and food, there was a special fragrant exotic fruit. Behind these golden tables were some dragons, but these dragons were all lying on the ground with their eyes closed, and some saliva was flowing out of their mouths and noses. Close to the dragon tribe were armored dragon generals. Although these dragon generals were holding weapons in their hands, they were also lying weakly on the ground. There was a strange smile on their faces and their eyes were tightly shut. On the contrary, behind the pillars on both sides of the main hall stood dozens of valiant dragon generals. These dragon generals were either holding long spears or huge sabers, and each of them was exuding a shocking murderous aura. Under the murderous aura, the main hall seemed very quiet. The seawater was as transparent as crystal, and there was not even a bubble. On the four sides of the main hall, the huge coral trees were emitting colorful light, and some of the water plants around the coral trees were not swaying at all. Everything in the main hall seemed to be confined. Fourth Prince. At this time, a voice broke the silence. It was one of the dragons on the high platform. This dragon was wearing a bright yellow armor, and the armor covered his face, making it impossible to see his appearance. Now is the time to make a decision. The other dragon, who was originally facing the golden seat, also turned around at this time. It was the fourth prince of the South Sea Dragon Palace, Ao Qian, whom Xiaohua had seen in the stacked Jade Legacy realm. Although Ao Qian's face was filled with arrogance, his eyes flashed with hesitation. His gaze swept across the two sides of the hall as he asked in a low voice, "Senior, do we really have to do this? Is there no other way?" The dragon that covered his face sneered. He looked at the golden throne and said, "There is only one person in the entire South Sea Dragon Palace who can sit on this golden throne. If there were no accidents, do you think it's possible for you to sit in that position?" Ao Qian smiled bitterly and said, "How is that possible? This junior is only the fourth crown prince. Above me are the first crown prince, second crown prince, and third crown prince. Furthermore, royal father favors the second crown prince. Even if the first crown prince cannot sit on this golden throne, this position is not something this junior can sit on. If that's the case, why can't there be an accident?" Even though what was done, the dragon race being continued to speak to Ao Qian patiently. He was in no hurry at all. "We've already done so much. Do you think that there's still a way out for you?" Ao Qian still smiled bitterly. Actually, this junior really didn't think that much. If not for senior, at this point, a trace of regret flashed across Ao Qian's eyes. He lowered his head and looked at the dragons lying on the ground. He didn't say anything else. The dragon race being was quick to act. He didn't hesitate at all. He smiled and said, "Hee hee, so the fourth crown prince only has love in his heart and doesn't have any ambitions. Then this old man has misjudged you. No matter, my sons, wake the princes up. This old man will apologize to them." "Yes." The dozens of dragon generals behind the pillar all agreed. They raised their hands and were about to take out the dragon shell. "Io, wait." Seeing that the dragon race was about to do it, Ao Qian panicked again. He hurriedly called out, "Senior, don't be anxious, fourth crown prince, is there anything else?" The dragon race said with a smile, "This old man has to hurry up and settle this matter here. I still have to go back and report to the elders." This. Ao Qian smiled bitterly. It's not that this junior doesn't want to listen to senior's advice, but to really cut off the blood relatives that I grew up with. This junior really can't bear it. The dragon race nodded. "You're not wrong. To tell you the truth, it's precisely because of this bit of kinship in your heart that the elders value you. If you didn't hesitate to make a move, this old man might really change his mind. Since you care about your blood relatives, this old man really has to help you." As he spoke, the dragon race raised his hand and pointed at the first crown prince and second crown prince who were lying on the ground on the left and right below the high platform. He asked, "When these two princes are scheming and fighting for the golden throne, have they ever shown mercy?" "Never." Ao Qian shook his head. According to what this junior knows, if there's a chance between them, they definitely won't let each other live. It's also because of this that this junior has the chance to go to Dragon Island to train. Not the two of them. What about them to you? If they knew that you wanted to take the Dragon King's position, would they let you live? The dragon race asked with interest. Sigh. How is that possible? Ao Qian smiled bitterly again. Ever since this junior was sensible, I knew that the position of Dragon King did not belong to me. I definitely could not have any other thoughts. All these years, this junior has never told the other members of the Dragon clan about my thoughts. I have never dared to look at that golden throne. In the eyes of the other dragons, this junior is just a carefree prince. Even so, the first crown prince has been beating around the bush and arranging spies around this junior. Isn't that the case? They don't have any kinship in their eyes. Why do you have to worry? The dragon race laughed. What you're doing is just what they want to do but can't do. Furthermore, the South Sea Dragon Palace will only decline in the hands of the dragon race who doesn't recognize their own kin. It will forever be at the bottom of the dragon palaces of the four seas. Only in your hands can it have a chance of glory and become the head of the dragon palaces of the four seas. Perhaps. Ao Qian's gaze was a little unfocused. Fourth Crown Prince. The dragon race spoke again. To be honest, today's opportunity is really a gift from the heavens. Your royal father went to the East Sea Dragon Palace for a banquet, and this old man just happened to be here. If this old man didn't have the elder's orders, how could the first crown prince, second crown prince, and third crown prince come together for a banquet? If this old man didn't have the deity parting flower and the fourth crown prince coincidentally had the bewitching wine, how could the three crown princes sleep so peacefully? All these coincidences. You don't think this old man is scheming, do you? That's not true. Ao Qian regained his senses and replied. This junior has only obtained the bewitching wine a few days ago. This junior has never mentioned it to anyone. Senior, you can't possibly know. Therefore, such an excellent opportunity is a gift from the heavens. If the fourth crown prince doesn't grasp it, then you won't have such an opportunity in the future. The dragon race said meaningfully. Furthermore, when other dragons have this opportunity in the future, fourth crown prince, you can't blame the heavens and accuse others. But the fourth crown prince still seemed to hesitate. The dragon race had already begun to frown. At this moment, a strange sound began to come from outside the hall. It sounded rather hurried. Who is it? The fourth crown prince, Ao Qian, was furious. He roared at the dragon general who was standing guard outside the hall. Didn't this prince say it already? No matter what happens outside, you can't disturb this prince. Yes, this subordinate understands. The vigilant dragon general agreed without hesitation. He waved his hand and a crescent-shaped dragon weapon appeared. The warning sound instantly disappeared. Fourth Crown Prince, could it be that you still have some misgivings? At this moment, the dragon race came to his senses and asked in a low voice. Ao Qian nodded. Indeed. Although royal father isn't in the dragon palace, if he returns and sees the three crown princes missing, senior, what do you think he'll think? The dragon race nodded. That's a problem. This isn't easy to answer. After all, you're the one who benefited the most. Anyone who guesses will put you at the top of the list of suspects. However, even if that's the case, so what? Does the South Sea Dragon King want to kill you as well? It's not impossible. Ao Qian answered with a bitter face. That's this junior's greatest misgivings. Buzz buzz. Before the dragon tribe could reply, an unusual activity was once again transmitted from outside the hall. Ao Qian's face was startled. He glanced in the direction of the hall door before looking at the dragon tribe. Finally, he opened his mouth and said, something unusual must have occurred outside the hall. Otherwise, it is impossible for this junior subordinate to repeatedly warn us. Fourth Crown Prince, let's go take a look. The dragon race sighed softly. He seemed to be very dissatisfied with the fourth crown prince's indecisiveness. Ao Qian nodded at the dragon general outside the hall door. He clenched his claws and glanced at the 3 crown princes below the high platform. Clearly, he was prepared to make a move if he sensed that something was wrong. The dragon general raised his dragon claw and grabbed at the hall door. A whirlpool appeared in the jade water outside the door. A moment later, a fist-sized dragon crystal flew out of the whirlpool. The dragon general hurriedly picked it up and respectfully presented it to the 4th crown prince. Ao Qian took the dragon crystal and scanned it with his yuan will. His expression changed drastically as he cried out involuntarily, "Enemy attack? How is this possible? Someone actually took advantage of the weakness of the South Sea Dragon Palace's defensive array to attack the array?" When Ao Qian said this, not only did the dragon race beside him, but even the dragon generals near the hall also changed their expressions. Today, in order to set up a trap, Ao Qian used the Dragon Palace's secret order to call back all the dragon generals within the defensive array. Firstly, he wanted to kill the dragon generals loyal to the 3 crown princes. Secondly, he was afraid that the 3 crown princes would resist. Ao Qian wanted to concentrate his forces near the hall. In his opinion, the South Sea Dragon Palace had not been attacked by enemies for tens of thousands of years. How could there be a change in half a day? However, an enemy had taken advantage of the moment when the defensive array was relaxed to attack. In that case, who was the enemy that came to invade? Chapter 4297. Ao Qian couldn't help but let his imagination run wild. His first reaction was that outside the South Sea Dragon Palace, the 3 princes' hidden forces had received the news and were aggressively charging in from outside. Dragon generals. Ao Qian panicked and hurriedly ordered, "Quickly arrange the troops and prepare to face the enemy." If Ao Qian could think of it, the dragon beside him could naturally think of it too. When he saw Ao Qian panicking, he couldn't help but despise him in his heart. However, there was no panic in his tone. Instead, he laughed and said, "Hee hee. 4th prince, don't worry." "Senior, why aren't you worried? If the 3 princes' forces attack, wouldn't our plan be exposed?" Ao Qian's tone was truly panicked. "4th prince, since there are dragon generals attacking, it means that our plan has been exposed. They want to save their masters, but what's the use of them coming? The 3 princes are in your hands. Even if they attack the main hall, don't they still have to listen to you? They aren't attacking to save their masters, they're clearly here to seek refuge." Hearing this, Ao Qian's expression calmed down. He rolled his eyes and nodded. "Senior's words are true. Why don't we wait a little longer? What are you waiting for? If we kill the 3 princes, won't their thoughts be cut off?" The dragon's brows hidden under the helmet frowned as he persuaded again. Ao Qian smiled and said, "No hurry, no hurry. A living dragon is much more useful than a dead prince." "All right." Seeing that his persuasion didn't work, the dragon didn't say anything else. Shwa. Ao Qian took out a diamond-shaped dragon weapon from his bosom and blew a dragon breath on it. A watery light appeared inside the dragon weapon. The watery light fell into the sea and formed a large mirror. The situation outside the South Sea Dragon Palace was impressively visible. Sure enough, the water outside the Dragon Palace surged like a monstrous wave. A pitch-black thunder boat broke through the water. When Xiao Hua flew out from the thunder boat, Ao Qian said in surprise, "Xiao Hua? Dragon Master Xiao? Damn it, why did he come to my South Sea Dragon Palace at this time? Could it be the other elders of Dragon Island?" While speaking, Ao Qian's expression changed greatly as he looked at the dragon beside him. It's really Xiao Hua. How could he have come to the South Sea? How strange. I heard that this guy isn't. The dragon race's reaction was even more intense than Ao Qian's. His voice was filled with confusion. However, a moment later, the dragon clapped his hands and said with a smile, Congratulations, fourth prince. Congratulations, fourth prince. Ao Qian stared blankly at the dragon, not knowing what to do, and asked curiously, Senior, this junior. What is the good news? The dragon said in a serious manner, didn't I just tell you that everything that happened today was a coincidence? It was all destined by the heavens. You're hesitating again, saying that you don't have any excuses. Now, the heavens have sent us an excuse. If the fourth prince continues to hesitate, he'll really lose the favor of the heavens. Excuse? You mean? Xiao Longshi. Ao Qian still didn't understand. What bullshit, Dragon Master? The dragon coldly scolded, what qualifications does a mere human have to be our dragon clan's Dragon Master? It's just an empty title that Ao Jia casually gave out in order to win over people's hearts and strengthen his own forces. No one in my Dragon Island will take this title seriously. Indeed. Ao Qian also didn't understand, that day, this Xiao Hua was indeed very close to the little clan elder, and he also has our dragon clan's bloodline. However, if we were to treat him as some dragon master, even this junior feels that it's inappropriate. If that five-clawed golden dragon that appeared in the folded jade legacy realm is our dragon master, then it's still acceptable. The five-clawed golden dragon is a dragon that Xiao Hua secretly brought in. The dragon immediately blurted out, Ao Jia said that he couldn't move the five-clawed golden dragon to work for him, so he sold a favor to Xiao Hua. He wanted to influence that five-clawed golden dragon through Xiao Hua, so that's how it is. Although Ao Qian felt that this explanation was a bit far-fetched, he didn't have the time to think too much about it. However, what does this have to do with an excuse? Fourth prince. The dragon was helpless. He could only say clearly, you killed the three princes, so why don't you just shift the blame to Xiao Hua? But Ao Qian was even more confused. Xiao Hua only has the strength of the 6th level of essence power. How could he kill the first, second, and third princes in succession? This junior has no way to explain it in front of royal father. What else do you need to explain? The dragon sneered, the dead can't redress their grievances. Why do you care what his cultivation is? Ao Qian narrowed his eyes. He already understood what the dragon was talking about. Fourth prince? The dragon waited for a moment, then asked in a drawn-out voice, the opportunity will not come again. This junior remembers that Xiao Hua seems to have an extremely sharp magic tool. Ao Qian asked very abruptly. The dragon was startled, then shook his head and said, this old man doesn't seem to have seen him use it. Ao Qian asked curiously, could it be that senior has also entered the folded jade legacy realm? The dragon knew that he had a slip of the tongue. His face was full of embarrassment, but fortunately, he was wearing a helmet and couldn't see it. He casually replied, of course this old man didn't, Shua. Without waiting for him to finish speaking, he saw Ao Qian suddenly wave his hand. That dragon claw emitted a silver brilliance, and a blade that was 100 zhang long rushed out. It landed on the left side of the high platform, right between the neck of the first prince who had collapsed on the ground. Pooh! With a sound, the first prince's dragon head flew out. That dragon blood spurted out, instantly dyeing the surrounding ground completely red. The surrounding seawater also began to surge with a bloody light. That dragon clearly didn't expect Ao Qian to suddenly make a move. He was actually startled for a moment, then stretched out his dragon claw and raised a finger. He smiled and said, Fourth Prince has made this old man have a whole new level of respect for you. Ao Qian looked at the ground indifferently. The first prince's dragon head was wearing a slightly small crown. The pearls on the crown were scattered and soaked in thick dragon blood. The dragon's eyes on the dragon's head were actually open at this moment, as if he had died with grievances. Humph. Ao Qian coldly snorted, and a dragon-slaying saber appeared in his dragon claw. Then, with a flash of saber light, the other two dragons behind the gold table were personally killed by him. The thick dragon blood rushed into the seawater with the dragon's soul. Gradually, the dragon's soul faded and disappeared, but the dragon blood filled the surroundings of the seawater. Clean it up. Ao Qian put away the dragon-slaying saber and ordered, kill all 3 of their personal dragon generals. Then, just as he said this, Ao Qian suddenly froze, because he saw Xiao Hua looking at him from the mirror. That gaze seemed to be able to see through everything. What's wrong? The dragon beside him was also happy that Ao Qian was so nimble. Hearing him suddenly stop, he couldn't help but ask curiously. Ao Qian blinked. When he looked again, Xiao Hua had already looked elsewhere, as if his gaze had just swept past by occasionally. Nothing. Ao Qian responded, and then ordered the dragon generals, clean it up, we will grandly welcome the dragon master of my dragon race here. Yes. The dragon generals quickly cleaned up, and the dragon said with a smile, looks like, this old man is no longer needed here. This old man will take his leave now. I hope that when this old man sees the 4th prince again, the 4th prince has already fulfilled his wish. Thank you, Senior. Ao Qian bowed and said with a smile, Senior, please return to Dragon Island. Please report to the elder that if this junior sits on this golden chair, I will definitely respect the elder's wishes. Good. The dragon helped Ao Qian up and nodded in response. Without wasting any time, he led some dragon generals out from the side of the hall. Xiao Hua's divine sense swept across the light and shadow of the South Sea Dragon Palace on the surface of the sea and didn't find anything strange. Naturally, he looked at the stairs of the Dragon Palace and said to the sea patrolling Yiksha, looks like, the old Dragon King doesn't welcome this old man as an uninvited guest. No. The sea patrolling Yiksha hurriedly said with a smile, not to mention that Senior is a dragon master, my South Sea Dragon Palace should welcome you respectfully. Even if ordinary human cultivators come to my South Sea Dragon Palace, my Dragon King will also treat them with respect. My Dragon King hasn't come out for a long time, I'm afraid that there is something important in the hall, right? All right. Xiao Hua responded faintly and didn't say anything else. Xiao Hua came this time, in addition to borrowing the teleportation array of the South Sea Dragon Palace to go to the North Sea Dragon Palace, he also had an extremely important purpose, which was to get the last metal and wood magnetism from the South Sea Dragon Palace. Back then, Xian gave Xiao Hua the refining method of the 5 elements wishful heaven cudgel, and at the same time gave Xiao Hua the location of several magnetism. This South Sea Dragon Palace had the metal and wood magnetism that Xiao Hua needed. Since he had a request, Xiao Hua had no choice but to lower his head slightly. He pondered for a moment, put his hands behind his back, and stood on the surface of the sea, waiting quietly. Who would have thought that after Xiao Hua stood there for half a cup of tea's time, he didn't see the South Sea Dragon King come out, and even a dragon general didn't appear. Xiao Hua's face gradually turned cold, and the sea patrolling Yiksha also felt that something was wrong. Ha ha ha. Xiao Hua laughed and said loudly, since the old dragon doesn't welcome this old man, then this old man has no choice but to force his way in. Senior. The sea patrolling Yiksha hurriedly shouted, how about Senior wait for a while, Junior will. Without waiting for the sea patrolling Yiksha to finish speaking, Xiao Hua's figure had already landed on the steps of the light shadow of the South Sea Dragon Palace. Woo-woo. A strong whirlwind blew out from the dragon gate on the light shadow, and hundreds of dragon scales flashed with golden light as they fell along with the whirlwind, wrapping around Xiao Hua's body. Seeing this, the sea patrolling Yiksha couldn't help but feel anxious, because he knew where the dragon scales fell. If the one who came was a dragon, the dragon scales would trigger the restriction of the Dragon Palace, opening the passage to the Dragon Palace under the sea. But if the one who came was not a dragon, these dragon scales would turn into sharp blades and kill the one who came. Of course, in the eyes of the sea patrolling Yiksha, these dragon scales absolutely couldn't hurt Xiao Hua, but these dragon scales would successfully ignite the anger of Xiao Hua, who had lost his patience. At that time. Thinking of this, the sea patrolling Yiksha didn't dare to think too much. He only wanted to rush over and block Xiaohua. Chapter 4298. Dong. At the critical moment, the golden bells rang in unison, and hundreds of conch girls flew out of the light and shadow dragon palace. These conch girls either struck the bells, played the zither, or blew the bamboo flute. In the sound of the zither and bamboo, the whirlwind and dragon scales that rushed up disappeared. Looking at the stairs again, a whirlpool appeared, and a dozen dragon generals stepped out. The one with the crown in front was the fourth prince, Ao Qian. When Ao Qian saw Xiaohua, he immediately bowed and shouted, "Junior Ao Qian greets Dragon Master Xiao." "Hee, so it's the fourth prince. I saw you in the folded jade legacy realm. No need to be too polite." How could Xiaohua let Ao Qian really bow? He hurriedly raised his hand to support his body and smiled. Ao Qian's face was filled with shame as he said, "Junior is really sorry. That day in the folded jade legacy realm, I actually misunderstood Dragon Master. If it wasn't for Dragon Master that day, it would have been impossible for us to come out of the legacy realm. When Junior came out of the legacy realm, I deliberately waited outside for half a day, wanting to apologize and thank Dragon Master in person. Later, when I heard that Senior became the Dragon Master of my dragon race, Junior was happier than anyone else. Junior had always hoped that Dragon Master would come to my South Sea Dragon Palace. I really didn't expect that Junior's dream would come true today. I really have to thank the heavens." While speaking, Ao Qian was about to bow again. Looking at the surprise on Ao Qian's face, it really didn't seem fake. Xiaohua's heart warmed as he helped Ao Qian up and said, "Fourth prince, you don't have to be too polite. There's no need to say thank you. That day, I was also forced into a dangerous situation and had no choice but to risk my life." Ao Qian smiled and said, "You don't have to say thank you, but an apology is necessary. Junior wronged Dragon Master. If I can't apologize, Junior won't be able to sleep and eat in peace." Xiaohua was helpless and could only let him bow a few times. Then, he helped him up and said, "The situation that day was unclear, so it's normal that fourth prince didn't understand. Now that the truth has been revealed, we don't need to say any more." "Yes, yes." Ao Qian stood up, looked at Xiaohua, and smiled happily again. "It's only been a few hundred years, Senior's cultivation has advanced by leaps and bounds. Junior is really envious. Hee, lucky, lucky." Xiaohua smiled and didn't say much. He looked behind Ao Qian and said, "Dragon King is in the palace? This Xiao has something to trouble you with." Ao Qian replied, "I'm sorry to disappoint you, Dragon Master Xiao. Father has gone to the East Sea Dragon Palace for a banquet. He's not in the Dragon Palace right now." Xiaohua was quite disappointed and asked, "Then when will your Majesty Dragon King return?" "Not necessarily," Ao Qian said. "It could be 10 days or 10 years. This." Xiaohua was a bit hesitant. He didn't know if he should let the fourth prince send a message to Ao Concrete. After all, the matter he asked the South Sea Dragon King for was not a small matter. Seeing Xiaohua's hesitation, Ao Qian hurriedly smiled and said, "Dragon Master Xiao, since you've come to my South Sea Dragon Palace, you should let this junior do his duty as a host. If Master Long has anything to say, you can tell this junior. If this junior can make a decision, this junior will work for senior. If this junior can't make a decision, then this junior can send a message to Royal Father and even ask Royal Father to come back." "Yes, fourth prince's words are reasonable." This Xiao pondered for a moment and nodded. "This Xiao thinks." Without waiting for Xiaohua to finish speaking, Ao Qian interrupted him and asked with a smile, Dragon Master Xiao, this is not the place to talk. How about Master Long follow this junior to the main hall of the Dragon Palace? This junior will first set up a banquet to entertain senior. How about we talk while drinking?" "Very good." Xiaohua didn't doubt him and nodded. Master Long, please. Ao Qian was overjoyed. He turned around and signaled Xiaohua to go first. Xiaohua also smiled slightly and raised his hand. Fourth Prince, please. All right, this junior will lead the way. Fourth Prince said politely and took the lead to step on the waves of the whirlpool. Xiaohua released his divine sense and took a rough look. He also stepped on the waves. The dragon generals brought by the fourth prince followed behind Xiaohua. The walls of the passage formed by the whirlpool were rotating seawater. The rotation of the seawater caused a huge rumbling sound. Just like a transmission passage, the rotation of the seawater sent Xiaohua and Ao Qian to the bottom of the sea. Even before walking out of the whirlpool, Xiaohua already saw that several thousand li of the bottom of the sea was covered by layers upon layers of palaces. These palaces were similar in style to the palaces on the Dragon Island. They were all abnormally simple and unadorned. However, there was a kind of luxury in this unadorned simplicity. The so-called splendor of gold and jade was nothing more than a kind of vulgarity in this place. At the end of the passage was a huge palace with the same light and shadow as the surface of the sea. The two words Southern Sea were written on the signboard. The gate of this palace wasn't open. Instead, there was a gate on the left side of the gate that couldn't be considered small. In front of that gate, there were also members of the water race standing respectfully. Xiaohua followed Ao Qian and landed. His gaze swept across the entire palace and his brows slightly wrinkled. This palace had no less than 9 palace gates. Other than the huge golden gate in the middle, the two sides were vermilion yellow gates. He didn't know what material the gates were made of. The vermilion yellow surface concealed strange dragon characters. Although the dragon characters were in the form of characters, in Xiaohua's eyes, they actually transformed into hundreds of huge dragons coiling in front of the palace gates. A kind of majestic dragon might pounce on Xiaohua from inside the palace gates. Xiaohua naturally didn't care about this dragon might. His slightly wrinkled brows were also seen by Ao Qian. Ao Qian hurriedly smiled apologetically and said, I'll let Dragon Teacher Xiao know that Dragon Teacher has graced my Southern Sea Dragon Palace with your presence. My Southern Sea Dragon Palace naturally has to open the gate in the middle to welcome you. However, my royal father isn't in the palace. This junior also doesn't have the qualifications to open the Dragon Palace. Therefore, I can only inconvenience Dragon Teacher to use the palace gates that my Dragon Palace of the Four Seas normally uses to welcome seniors. Xiaohua understood. He casually waved his hand and said with a smile, no need to be polite. This old man dislikes empty formalities the most. Just do as you please. However, after a moment, Xiaohua still asked curiously, who usually opens the gate in the middle? Ao Qian smiled and said, naturally, it's opened by seniors who have already reached the highest realm in the 3 continents. For example, the immortal emperor of the immortal palace, the 3 Buddhist lords of the Thunder Temple, the 7 great sages of the 1,000 demons sacred realm, and the various elders of the Dragon Island. Oh, of course, other than the realm, when respected seniors come, it will also be opened. For example, Dragon Teacher Xiao. There's no need to mention this old man. Xiaohua smiled and waved his hand. This old man only has an empty title. How can the Dragon Teacher of my Dragon Clan be an empty title? Ao Qian raised his hand and asked Xiaohua to leave first. He followed behind Xiaohua and replied with narrowed eyes, if Dragon Teacher Xiao hadn't done a great favor to my Dragon Clan in the Stacked Jade Legacy realm, how could the various elders of the Dragon Island bestow the title of Dragon Teacher to Senior? Perhaps Senior isn't of my Dragon Clan and doesn't know the origin of the title of Dragon Teacher. The so-called Dragon Teacher is the master of all of my Dragon Clan. No matter where Senior goes, my Dragon Clan has to treat Senior as a master and disciple. We must listen to Senior's words and can't refute them. Ao Qian had the intention to flatter. He carefully accompanied Xiaohua along the way and led Xiaohua to the previous main hall. At this time, The main hall had already been cleaned up and there was no trace of blood. As Xiaohua walked into the main hall, he immediately saw the golden throne at the head of the hall. That enormous throne was carved with countless strange patterns, and a familiar desolate aura was emitted from those patterns, directly filling the entire main hall. If Xiaohua hadn't fallen into the heavenly prison and saw this desolate relic, he would definitely sigh and be envious. He might even covet it in his heart. But at this time, after plundering the mysterious desolate continent for 100 years, Xiaohua's space was already filled with treasures. This golden seat was no longer in his eyes. However, the patterns on the golden seat clearly had hidden dragon patterns. It was unknown how many times the dragon kings of the past had blessed it with the heavenly dragon language technique. This was the fundamental reason why Xiaohua was moved. Ao Qian saw Xiaohua's narrowed eyes and secretly despised him in his heart. He raised his hand and invited Xiaohua to sit in the guest seat below the high platform. He accompanied Xiaohua on the opposite main seat and said with a smile, "Dragon teacher Xiao, my royal father isn't here. This junior will host a banquet on behalf of royal father to entertain senior. If there's anything wrong, please forgive me." "Thank you, fourth prince." Xiaohua knew that the dragon race was similar to the human race in some aspects of etiquette. Without a banquet, they couldn't talk, so he nodded slightly. Not long after, the dragon palace servants placed the banquet. The golden table in front of Xiaohua was already covered with many delicacies. Although Xiaohua was already a Mahayana cultivator, there were many things in front of him that he hadn't seen before. In the end, 2 graceful shell girls danced with their shells. Their bodies were faintly visible in the transparent shells, looking particularly alluring. The shell girls leisurely came from outside the main hall. They swam through the seawater in the main hall, emitting a warm fragrance that seeped into one's heart. When they swam in front of Xiaohua, they lowered their heads slightly and took out a strange flower with their mouth. This strange flower only had 3 petals, and these 3 petals were almost transparent. Hidden in the transparent flower were dozens of patterns of different colors. These patterns were also strange, and each one was like an undetectable flood dragon. The strange flower swayed slightly in the mouth of the shell girl, and the dozens of flood dragons reflected the light of the overflowing seawater. It was as if dozens of flood dragons were flying around the shell girl. A strange look appeared in Xiaohua's eyes. He didn't know what the banquet would do with these flowers. However, looking at Ao Qian across from him, there was also a shell girl presenting flowers. Moreover, Ao Qian was looking at the dragon's shadow in front of him with interest. Xiaohua felt relieved. Sure enough, when the shell girl placed the flower on a crystal plate to the right of the golden table, the fragrance of the flower enveloped the delicacies. An appetizing fragrance wafted out from the delicacies, and it was even more alluring than before. After the shell girl waved her shell again and left seductively, Ao Qian moved his gaze away from the shell girl's back. He glanced at Xiaohua and then glanced at the spirit-parting flower in front of Xiaohua. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He raised his hand and picked up a huge wine bottle. He gestured, "Dragon teacher Xiao, Junior salutes Senior on behalf of my father. Welcome to my Southern Sea Dragon Palace." Chapter 4299. Xiaohua looked at Ao Qian, then looked at the wine bottle in front of him and said with a bitter smile, "Fourth prince, this old man doesn't usually like to drink, and this wine bottle seems to be used by the dragon race. If this old man drinks it, won't he be drunk in the main hall? This is Junior's negligence." Ao Qian was a bit embarrassed and hurriedly scolded, "Useless servant, why aren't you changing it for Dragon Master?" Yes. A conch girl hurriedly walked out from behind the pillar, holding a jade plate in her hand. Inside the jade plate were a few crystal cups the size of a fist. These cups were also transparent, and there were some different colored spots inside. These spots were shining brightly, and they were still the bright stars in the night. The conch girl carefully placed the crystal cup in front of Xiaohua, then respectfully picked up the wine bottle and poured it for Xiaohua. Only then did she withdraw and stand behind the pillar. Dragon Master Xiao, please. Ao Qian stood up, raised the wine bottle, and said respectfully. All right. Xiaohua helplessly raised his cup. After all, this was the etiquette of the South Sea Dragon Palace. He didn't like to drink, but drinking a few cups was right. Seeing Xiaohua raise his cup, Ao Qian's eyes smiled. He raised the wine bottle first and said, Junior will drink first. Dragons were several times better at drinking than cows. Xiaohua had seen Ao Jing's straightforwardness on the dragon boat a few years ago. At this time, Ao Qian was not inferior to Ao Jing at all. The huge wine bottle was swallowed in a few mouthfuls, and there was no change in expression on his face. Xiaohua also faintly smiled, raised his cup, and drank the bewitching wine. The wine entered his mouth, and his nose smelled the fragrance of the deity-parting flower. Xiaohua's eyes slightly shook, and he actually had a kind of illusion where many shell girls fell from the sky. At this time, Ao Qian's somewhat blurred voice came again, Dragon Master Xiao, this is my South Sea Dragon Palace's special Xiao Xin wine. It has a different flavor, and it has always been brought by father for the seniors to enjoy. Today, Junior borrowed senior's arrival and also basked in some glory. Ao Qian's voice was actually a bit ethereal. Xiaohua saw that the shell girls in the illusion were beginning to have some unbearable actions, so he hurriedly used a secret technique. When the illusion in front of him disappeared, a kind of indescribable sobriety and a feeling of his bloodline gushing out from his body. Xiaohua's bloodline power, which hadn't improved for a long time, actually had a very small improvement. Oh. This is good stuff. Xiaohua looked at the bewitching wine on the golden table with some astonishment. He firmly believed Ao Qian's words. When Xiaohua raised his head to look at Ao Qian, he saw that Ao Qian was actually slumped behind the golden table. His eyes were somewhat dazed as he stared at the clear seawater. There was even saliva dripping from the corner of his mouth. It was as if he had entered the illusion that Xiaohua had seen before. Hee, this little guy seems to be gluttonous too. Xiaohua smiled and thought to himself, it's clearly a good thing that the South Sea Dragon King brought to entertain his distinguished guests, yet he actually wanted to steal it. This can be considered a lesson. As he spoke, Xiaohua raised his hand again, picked up another cup of bewitching wine, and drank it in one gulp. Xiaohua didn't like to drink, but if there was good wine that could stimulate the power of his bloodline, how could he let it go? When Xiaohua was drinking by himself, Ao Qian was dumbfounded. Although the deity-parting flower and bewitching wine were aimed at the dragon race, they also had some effect on human cultivators, especially on the physical body. The human race had no way to compare with the dragon race. Ao Qian was originally waiting for Xiaohua to collapse on the golden table before taking action. But seeing Xiaohua drinking cup after cup as if nothing had happened, he was truly puzzled. He couldn't help but secretly criticize in his heart, damn it, is this still a human? Even if he's a dragon, I'm afraid he would be lying down right now, right? Could it be that this Xiaohua's cultivation has already reached the peak of the 9th level of essence energy? Thinking of this, Ao Qian couldn't help but think of another possibility. Of course, it was only an instant before this thought flashed through Ao Qian's mind. After all, when Xiaohua showed off his might in the stacked Jade Legacy realm, he was only around the 6th or 7th level of essence energy. On the Turning Dragon platform, he was even besieged by the dragon race of the Four Seas. Ao Qian didn't believe that a human cultivator could cultivate to the 9th level of essence energy in a short 200 years. In fact, even if Xiaohua revealed his strength around the 8th level of essence energy, Ao Qian was still a little surprised. However, at this time, Ao Qian's heart was filled with thoughts of how to frame Xiaohua. The higher Xiaohua's strength was, the more advantageous it was for Ao Qian. It would be easier for him to explain the grievous news of the 3 princes being killed to the South Sea Dragon King. Therefore, Ao Qian didn't have time to think about anything else. Of course, Ao Qian was also extremely glad that he didn't immediately make trouble after Xiao Hua drank the bewitching wine. Instead, he chose to observe. Otherwise, his entire plan would be disrupted. After Xiao Hua finished drinking the several crystal cups on the golden table, the conch girl beside him hurriedly walked out, wanting to refill Xiao Hua's cup. Xiao Hua waved his hand and smiled, "No need." "Yes." The conch girl didn't dare to say anything more, hurriedly lowering her head and retreating. However, anything with spiritual effects would always have a limited effect. After Xiao Hua drank a few cups, the effect of the bewitching wine's bloodline power was almost negligible. Xiao Hua was disdainful of merely tasting spiritual wine. His gaze landed on the deity parting flower. Seeing Xiao Hua looking at the deity parting flower, Ao Qian no longer dared to pretend to be drunk. He slightly opened his eyes and looked at Xiao Hua with astonishment. "Dragon Master Xiao, you..." Seeing Ao Qian wake up, Xiao Hua shifted his gaze from the deity parting flower to Ao Qian and smiled. "Many thanks, 4th Prince. This wine is very good. It will be very helpful for this old man's cultivation." "Damn it." Ao Qian was sweating profusely. He almost jumped up. The bewitching wine and deity parting flower that could make an 8th grade elemental power dragon faint, in the mouth of Xiao Hua, a human, only had 2 words to describe it as very good. Moreover, it was very helpful for this person's cultivation. Ao Qian felt like he was about to collapse. He was a bit regretful of his own calculations. Because the development of the matter had just started, he felt like it was about to break out of his control. If Dragon Master Xiao likes it, Junior will prepare. At this point, Ao Qian awkwardly stopped and said in a low voice, "Junior secretly used Royal Father's wine. I'm afraid I can't give Senior more to take away. Also, I ask Senior to keep this a secret for this Junior." "Huh, don't worry." Xiao Hua laughed, "This old man has received benefits. Why would I expose your shortcomings for no reason?" "Very good, very good." While Ao Qian smiled, he began to regret his previous actions. Without Xiao Hua as a scapegoat, he really couldn't explain to the Southern Sea Dragon King. He had to find another reason. At this time, Xiao Hua opened his mouth. "4th Prince, this old man came to the Southern Sea Dragon Palace today to discuss 2 matters. Oh, Senior, please speak." Ao Qian was obviously a bit absent-minded and asked casually. Xiao Hua looked at Ao Qian's flickering eyes and felt a bit bitter in his heart. He knew that this time, he came for nothing. The Southern Sea Dragon King wasn't here. Not to mention the metal, wood, and magnetism, even the matter of borrowing the teleportation channel, this 4th Prince probably couldn't make the decision, right? Thinking of this, Xiao Hua looked around in bewilderment and asked, 4th Prince, where did the Southern Sea Dragon Palace's Crown Prince and the others go?" Ao Qian quivered and hurriedly collected his thoughts. He smiled apologetically and said, "My royal brothers have some matters that are not within the Dragon Palace. As for Senior's matter, I'm afraid this Junior can't make the decision." Seeing that Ao Qian's attitude was different from when they first met, Xiao Hua sneered in his heart. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have drunk this so-called spiritual wine. Now that he had gained the other party's face, he was embarrassed to fall out with him. Forcefully using the teleportation channel might be a bit troublesome. Thus, Xiao Hua said indifferently, "What? Could it be that the 4th Prince won't even let this old man say what he wants to say?" I wouldn't dare." Ao Qian hurriedly replied, "This Junior was really happy to see Senior earlier, so my blood surged and I agreed without thinking. But now that this Junior thinks about it..." "Oh, Senior, do you have something to say? Tell me first. If possible, this Junior will take the risk and agree. And this old man thanks the 4th Prince first." Although Xiao Hua was dissatisfied with Ao Qian's attitude, he had always been amenable to persuasion and not coercion. He nodded slightly and said, "This old man wants to use the South Sea Dragon Palace's teleportation channel to go to the North Sea Dragon Palace. I don't know if the fourth prince can make the decision." Ao Qian shook his head slightly. "This teleportation channel is a secret of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Ordinary sea race and human race don't know about it. Since Dragon Master Shaoan knows about this and came to my South Sea Dragon Palace, this junior wants to help senior and is willing to help senior. However, the token to activate the teleportation channel is in the hands of my royal father. This junior doesn't have it, so, this junior can't help senior. Senior, please forgive me." Xiaohua naturally didn't need any token to activate the teleportation channel. However, facing Ao Qian's attitude as a junior, Xiaohua really couldn't fall out with him and make things difficult for this respectful junior. "Forget it." Xiaohua stood up and flicked his sleeves. He stood up and said, "This old man will take his leave for now. When your Dragon King returns in a few days, this old man will come again to visit. Senior, don't be anxious." Ao Qian really couldn't bear to let Xiaohua, the scapegoat, leave so easily. He hurriedly stood up and said, "Senior, please have some food and wine first. Tell me about the other matter. Perhaps this junior can make the decision then." While speaking, Ao Qian raised his head and looked outside the main hall. His gaze changed. The dragon generals outside the main hall were already on guard after receiving Ao Qian's signal. They should be Ao Qian's backup plan from before. Xiaohua didn't care about these dragon generals. He looked at Ao Qian and said with a smile that wasn't a smile, "This old man heard that your South Sea Dragon Palace has a metal and wood magnetism? Is there such a thing? Metal and wood magnetism?" Ao Qian stared blankly. Suddenly, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He hurriedly said, "Senior, please take a seat." "So senior came for that thing?" "What?" Xiaohua raised his eyebrows and said curiously, "Even the fourth prince can't make the decision on the teleportation channel. Can this metal and wood magnetism make the decision?" Chapter 4300. No, Dragon Master Shao has misunderstood. Ao Qian's reaction was extremely fast. His thoughts turned quickly, and he smiled apologetically. This junior can't decide on the matter of metal and wood magnetism. However, this junior knows that this item is quite a headache for my royal father. If senior has the means to take it away, I'm sure my royal father will be happy. This junior is naturally willing to help you with such a mutually beneficial matter. Oh. Xiaohua stopped and sat down. He asked with interest, "What do you mean?" Ao Qian smiled. Senior is a Taoist cultivator. At this point, Ao Qian suddenly stared blankly for a moment, and he glanced at Xiaohua with a strange expression. Only now did Ao Qian realize that Xiaohua was a Tao sect cultivator, and being able to cultivate to the 6th or 7th grade of origin energy in the 3 continents was already extremely rare. How could there be a cultivator like Xiaohua who had cultivated to the 8th grade of origin energy? However, Ao Qian was only surprised for a moment. He threw this thought aside and explained, "Senior must know that the physiques of the human race belong to the 5 elements. Although my dragon race doesn't cultivate the 5 elements, my physique and dragon arts are mixed with the 5 elements. Among the dragon palaces of the 4 seas, the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace's nature is metal, the Western Sea Dragon Palace's nature is fire, the Northern Sea Dragon Palace's nature is wood, and my Southern Sea Dragon Palace's nature is earth. Within the 4 seas, according to the different attributes of the dragon palaces, there are many natural spiritual items of the 5 elements. The metal and wood magnetism shouldn't be within the jurisdiction of my Southern Sea Dragon Palace. However, this magnetism is not far from my Southern Sea Dragon Palace. This item interferes with the cultivation of my Southern Sea Dragon Palace's dragon race. My royal father wanted to ask the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace and the Northern Sea Dragon Palace for help several times to take away this metal and wood magnetism. However, I'm sure Senior also understands that within the magnetism, the items of the 5 elements must be restricted. My 3 uncles and my royal father tried to do everything they could to no avail. Later on, they simply used some secret techniques of the dragon race to simply cover up this magnetism and ignored it. At this point, Ao Qian was somewhat excited. He stood up and said, "Senior, please wait a moment. Junior will send a message to my royal father. If possible, Senior can use the transportation channel." "Great." Xiao Hua clapped and said, "Then I'll have to trouble 4th Prince." "It's not troublesome at all," Ao Qian said respectfully. "It's my honor to be able to do something for Xiao Longshire." With that said, Ao Qian walked to the door of the main hall. He did not leave the main hall. He took out a long bay and handed it to the dragon general on duty at the door. "Go quickly. Send this message to the Dragon King. If he has any orders, report to this king immediately." "Yes, 4th Prince." The dragon general took the dragon shell and hurriedly left, not daring to be negligent. Xiao Hua looked at Ao Qian's back and used his heavenly eye divine ability. He didn't hear any message from Ao Qian, so he didn't suspect anything. Then, Ao Qian turned back and accompanied Xiao Hua to talk and eat some delicacies. After 2 hours, a dragon general hurriedly returned the long bay to Ao Qian. He reported, "The Dragon King's order has arrived. 4th Marquis, please verify it." "Yes." Ao Qian took the long bay and looked at it. He nodded with satisfaction and said, "You can leave now. Arrange the carriage." "Yes, this subordinate understands." The dragon general hurriedly left after receiving the order. Ao Qian turned around and bowed with a smile on his face. "Congratulations, Xiao Longshire. Father is very happy to receive this junior's message. However, the matter at the East Sea Dragon Palace is not over yet. Therefore, he asked this junior to accompany Senior and wait for his return. Of course, if Senior can settle this matter in advance, this junior can also gain the favor of my father." "Oh, Senior, please rest assured. The matter of using the transmission channel is not a problem at all." "Hee, good." Xiao Hua knew Ao Qian's mood. In fact, he was even more excited. He was more eager to obtain the metal and wood elemental magnetism than Ao Qian. After all, this was the last elemental magnetism to refine the 5 elements wishful heaven cudgel. "Thank you, Senior." "Thank you." Ao Qian hurriedly bowed. He looked at the delicacies on the golden table and smiled. "If possible, can Senior go now? After this junior succeeds, this junior will organize a banquet to celebrate Senior's success?" "Of course." Xiao Hua nodded with a smile. "Please." Ao Qian was very excited. He raised his hand and invited Xiao Hua to go first. Xiao Hua walked out from behind the golden table and arrived outside the palace gate. He saw a huge whale dragging something that looked like a dragon boat had stopped at the bottom of the steps. "Senior, please." Ao Qian was still very respectful. He invited Xiao Hua to board the chariot first. Xiao Hua was not polite. He floated up and landed on the chariot. However, the chariot was so big that Xiao Hua felt small standing on it. Ao Qian boarded the chariot and said very considerately with a smile, "Senior, I've wronged you. This boat doesn't have a seat that humans usually use." No matter. Xiao Hua was also in a very good mood. He waved his hand and said indifferently. Then, the giant whale dragged the chariot into the depths of the dragon palace. At the same time, dozens of armored dragon generals surrounded the chariot to protect it. Xiao Hua had not released his divine sense before. Furthermore, the dragon formation of the South Sea Dragon Palace had sealed off a portion of his divine sense. So Xiaohua only knew that the South Sea Dragon Palace was huge. As for how huge it was, he had no idea. But after the giant whale had been swimming for over 2 hours, there were still many palaces under the chariot. Xiaohua was completely speechless. He sighed and said, "Fourth prince, people often say that the richest place in the world is not the immortal palace, but the dragon palaces of the 4 seas. It seems that it really is true. Although I haven't seen anything particularly precious, looking at such a huge palace, I'm afraid there isn't anything bigger in this world, right?" "The East Sea Dragon Palace," Ao Qian replied without the slightest hesitation. "Senior must have never been to the East Sea Dragon Palace. Otherwise, you wouldn't say that." Xiaohua was a bit embarrassed. He looked at Ao Qian's spirited face and replied, "Indeed, other than Dragon Island, this is the first time I've been to the dragon race's territory. Dragon Island is the holy land of my dragon race. My dragon palace of the 4 seas naturally cannot compare. Furthermore, Dragon Island is not as luxurious as my dragon palace of the 4 seas." Ao Qian said with a smile. Just as he said that, a colorful halo appeared in the seawater 1,000 kilometers in front of him. This halo was like a spinning wheel of light, sprinkling layers of colors on the seawater, the reefs, and the fishes swimming in the seawater. The deep-sea fishes were originally colorful. Now that they were reflected in this halo, and were frightened by the whale and the dragon generals, they swam frantically. It was as if a huge colorful whirlwind was blowing at the bottom of the sea. It was exceptionally beautiful. "Senior, the place where the halo is located is the metal and wood elemental magnetism. There is a dragon formation confinement on it. The successive dragon kings of my South Sea Dragon Palace would use the heavenly dragon language technique to strengthen the dragon formation." Ao Qian raised his hand and pointed at the halo in the distance and explained, "When Royal Father sent back the order, he already said that this junior should take the token of the Dragon Palace so that senior can enter the dragon formation. This junior has already ordered my subordinates to prepare." As he spoke, Ao Qian spat out a mouthful of dragon breath at a part of the carriage. Several dragon patterns appeared on it, and then a dragon-shaped token that was more than 10 feet in size flew out from the dragon patterns. Ao Qian looked at such a large token and raised his hand. The token flew in front of Xiaohua and smiled, "Thank you for your trouble, senior." Seeing Ao Qian cover his mouth and laugh, Xiaohua also laughed. His instinctive wariness lessened a bit. He raised his hand and grabbed, causing the space near the token to suddenly distort.